Google just paid $571 million to license the technology. Human trials are already underway.
Orwell was an optimist because he never understood the power of machine learning.
I would describe myself definitely as a protopian or a techno-optimist.
So I'm really interested in how technologies shape our behaviours, our relationships, the way that we conceive of ourselves, what's possible.
She touched it every morning before sunrise. A small gold ring, the only evidence anyone had ever chosen her. Then one fine day, she took it off. For me, a boy with no shoes, no future anyone could see, no proof he was even worth the price. My mother didn't pawn a ring that day. She pawned the only story she had that mattered to her. And she bet it on a story that didn't exist yet. That was my story. I grew up in a single room in South India, in the slums. Dirt floors and walls that couldn't keep out the rain or the doubt. But my mother never looked at those walls. She never looked past them. That's not hope, because hope waits. She chose a direction and walked towards it. That's called orientation. Fire didn't ask our ancestors if they were ready for it. Neither did electricity or internet or the splitting of the atom. The future never asks us the permission. Right now, someone is designing the world your grandchildren are going to inherit. What would you give up to live long enough to meet your great-great-grandchildren? What would you give up to never forget your mother's face? What if the future offered you everything that you ever wanted and it costed you everything that you had? My mother couldn't read, she couldn't plan, she couldn't prepare, but she knew what every futurist had forgotten. The future belongs to those who face it. Not the ready, but the ones who are oriented towards it. This show won't describe the future for you. It will drop you right into it and ask you questions that are thought-provoking. Who will you be when you get there? What will you hold on to? What will you let go? What will you pawn and for whom? My mother is gone now. But every morning I think about a woman touching a gold ring in the dark, choosing a direction, choosing to believe. She couldn't have imagined the machines that think or lives stretched beyond 2 centuries. But she gave me something no algorithm would ever replicate. The courage to face what I cannot predict. This is tomorrow today. The future is already here, walking towards you. Turn and face it together. Thank you, Four Seasons Hotel, and we're deeply thankful for making this space ours for today. Thank you so much. In July 2024, researchers at Imperial College and Duke University gave elderly mice a single injection. It blocked one protein. The mice lived 25% longer, not just alive, but it was healthier, stronger, fewer cancers. Google just paid $571 million to license the technology. Human trials are already underway. In May 2025, Max Planck Institute combined two existing drugs. The mice lived 35% longer. Harvard's David Sinclair predicts an age reversal pill by 2035. $100 a month. Take it for 4 weeks and get biologically younger. Can you believe that? The longest verified human lifespan is 122 years. But Sinclair believes it could double. So I'm not looking at 35 years anymore. I may be looking at 250 years. 250 years means 7 different careers. It means you're going to see great grandchildren, and they'll be probably older than you. Till death do us apart suddenly means 2 centuries of marriage. Would you take the pill? If death gives meaning, what happens when death becomes optional? My mother lived 70 years. She pawned her wedding ring for my education. What would she say if I lived 3 times her lifetime? Would that honor her sacrifice or somehow diminish that? I came to this country with $34 in my pocket. I built technology for Fortune 500 companies. I filed hundreds of patents. But I've never faced a question like this in my lifetime. What am I going to do if I lived for 250 years? And that science isn't coming. It's already here. In this episode, we explore exactly that. Not whether we can live longer, but whether we should. And what it means for love, for purpose, for meaning itself. Because when the clock we've been always racing against just stopped ticking. Welcome to the inaugural show of Tomorrow Today. I'm super excited to have great guests, in fact. The purpose of this show is to evaluate the technology that is already emergent amongst us. And what does it mean to the society in general? For my amazing guests, I'd love for you guys to introduce yourself, Jason, Natalie, and Kevin, in that order. Why don't you introduce yourself, Jason?
Sure.
You are a phenomenal, prominent figure and a celebrity. And I'm so glad to have you. But I would love for my guests to hear, in your own words, who you are.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Silva, and I'm a filmmaker, a digital creator, and very often a keynote speaker as well. My background is mostly as a television presenter. I would say that my most high-profile program was Brain Games, which was a TV show I hosted for National Geographic Channel. Did that for 5 seasons, and that looked at it was like ABCs of neuroscience. It was a show that kids and parents could watch together. And then I also hosted another show called Origins, which was about transformative technologies that changed humanity. I would describe myself definitely as a protopian or a techno-optimist, which means I like to dream about the ways that we can use our technologies to extend our capacities. I'm passionate about human flourishing, which also includes mental health. And so I feel like Paleolithic brains, medieval laws, and godlike technologies is a bit of a problem. So I'm always thinking about ways in which we can sort of up-level our psyches and souls and psychology so that we can better deploy these increasingly godlike tools. But ultimately, I'm a dreamer and a romantic.
Fantastic. Natalie, you're the rising star in the world of AI and social psychology. And I'm really excited to have you. So love for you to actually educate our guests on your background, what do you do, and why are you here in the first place?
Well, this is a lovely opportunity, so thanks. Nice to be here with you guys. So my background is in psychology, behavioral science, and persuasive tech. And so I'm really interested in how technologies shape our behaviours, our relationships, the way that we conceive of ourselves, what's possible. But I'm also an artist and a musician since very young, and I'm absolutely passionate about finding ways in which to tap into that which we most profoundly love and what gives us meaning, and to make our decisions from a much more rooted place, embedded in the idea of what is it that gives life vitality, not just our lives, but also the wider living world. So to your humanist, I'd say I'm possibly more on the animist side. And I think we have this precious moment in time where many of the crises that we face share roots, and we get the opportunities now to have these kinds of conversations, to robustly challenge one another and our assumptions, to find pathways forward that can, like you suggest, reduce human and life suffering and create a world which is much more regenerative, dignified, and that creates a space for people to live meaningfully. And that's going to be a pluralistic vision. Yeah.
Amen.
Glad to have you. Excited to have you. Excited to have you. And finally, my friend here, Kevin Brown, like, you know, a serial entrepreneur. Kevin, like, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, amazing to be here and to meet everyone. So, Shekhar, you and I have known each other for 10 years, and I've been looking at some of these topics from the technologist point of view. So I've been building and running companies in Silicon Valley for the last 25 years. Really pretty, blown away by the impact of, of technology. I got to work on the early internet and saw that big change. I grew up analog, so we went from analog to the internet, and now we're onto something new. And it's very interesting to be in the middle of it. So I started working on AI. We were doing pre-AI things way back at Inktomi in 1999. Dealing with basically how do you look at the whole internet and use the meaning of web pages to categorize and start to take meaning out of the massive data. Started working on computer vision in 2013. So it's been I've always loved to be on kind of the early edge of that technology. And now seeing what's happened in the last few years, it's really just it's this accelerating curve, and so it's both I'd say a concerning and a scary time to be around. But I'm also really driven by curiosity, and I'm really curious to see what we can do, what's going to happen, and how can we really extract the best out of it, and that's something that is pretty exciting. Personally, my favorite things are I'm a musician, so I play the drums. I'm a chef. I love to cook. Family. So for me, it's really that intersection of science and art that's quite interesting, and especially when it brings people together. Those are the things I'm really excited about.
Great. So it's no coincidence that I have a futurist, I have a social psychologist, and I have a technologist. And I am a dummy here.
Would not characterize you like that at all.
No. So we're going to have a lot of fun talking about the role of technology and basically how humanity can consume it. So, this is a very important topic for me because I come from slums in India, and somehow through my mother's blessing, my father's virtues that he had, I got the escape velocity, and I was able to get out, and I was able to basically figure out angels in my life, like Kevin and others, and they showed me the direction of what technology can do to a person, and basically what I want to get out of this show is to educate people on the choices that we have, the agency that we have, and where is really technology headed in the first place. Because there's so much noise, there's so much hype, there's AI everywhere, there's infrastructure, investment talk everywhere, and people are just going frenzy about it. And there is a lot of evolving emergent technology that has meaningful impact in our lives, and sometimes scary implications that we haven't contemplated. So I would love this conversation to be about that. So we could educate people on how to embrace technology and what is the best use of technology and what are we getting into. Okay?
150 years. Can you believe it?
150 years married, and I'd do it all over again.
Remember when till death do us part actually meant something?
Now we're just beautifully stuck forever. Come on, let's get the champagne ready before our guests arrive.
The first question I have for you guys, and Jason, Jason and then Natalie and then Kevin, what did you feel when you watched that movie?
Well, I loved the futuristic world where it begins. This sort of environment felt like this kind of futuristic house that also felt kind of like an Apple store. Like I could just feel the futuristic ambiance. And they were about to celebrate. It felt like an early evening feeling. They looked vibrant and youthful, and right away they're like, happy 150. And so for sure, my solar plexus got relaxed. I was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Like to be 150 and be young, and there's no death and decrepitude and illness and terror. I have a lot of anxiety related to mortality. I have since I was a teenager, and I've been dreaming about like an intervention that can come in time potentially to save my parents. But my relationship with the transcendent as an artist still hasn't fully resolved my fear of mortality. I think human beings are suspended in paradox, but I don't know what comes after. I'm pretty agnostic, but what I do know is there's a lot of books that I want to read. And certainly a single human lifespan is not enough. I want to have many lives within my single life. I want to live in many countries for 2 decades each. I want to learn Japanese, and then I want to move to Europe, and then I want to hang out in safaris in South Africa, but like for decades at a time. And so from the beginning, I immediately felt soothed by their youthful longevity. And of course, then as the story progresses, then it becomes really interesting and thought-provoking because it raises questions about, well, what happens when we're ageless and we have these radically extended lifespans? Then we have to have a negotiation about monogamy, or the idea that we change and evolve. Like maybe we have many lifetimes, so then maybe we have many marriages that each last 150 years. And so I thought that was like a very interesting and compelling thing. I certainly, as somebody of many interests, imagine that if we have radical longevity, we're going to become definitely intellectually promiscuous. We're going to have promiscuity in our careers and interests and whatnot. But I also think we might become polyamorous in a new kind of way. So I don't agree with the actions taken by the male protagonist, where he was like, I'd rather die than date somebody else. I mean, for all I know, they could still stay friends with the ex and just go, So that's what I was like, you're going to choose death? Like, do you know something I don't? But yeah, and I also, the idea that the state would say that if you opt not to switch partners, the punishment is death, that seemed like, I don't see why that would be the case. Like, why does it have to be so harsh? If we have radical abundance, then you should have like radical freedom of choice, So that's the only part that didn't sit well with me. Yeah, initial impressions.
Natalie.
So interesting, building on that, I think one of the other things that struck me was how isolated the place was. Mostly because I think if we're thinking about an interconnected future where technology, having had its foundations in connection, so the internet connected people, social media normally connected people, why would it be that people be living in really hyper-individualized, secluded lives? There are many reasons why that might be the case. Anyway, so that was the first thing that really struck me, was this really enclosed space, and then the idea that if you are living a life, as the couple suggest, which is entwined, they've been managing it for 150 years. If you look at the sociobiology of it, typically couples who share a physical environment also share gut biome, they share psychological traits. Memory is not stored within a single individual, it's stored socially, so you would have a shared cultural, social history together. the chances are that if you have a partnership which grows and develops, and you mentioned several lifestyles or lifetimes, which can allow you to experience different places of life, styles of life, intellectual endeavors, etc. If you have been with someone for 150 years, one might imagine that you would grow together with certain level of promiscuity feeding into the relationship. And relationship experts will often talk about this desire for novelty on the one hand and familiarity on the other. And you often end up partnering with someone, especially in longer term relationships, where that balance is dynamic, but it continues as an appetite throughout life. So I think there's certain things that it raised for me, this question of, okay, if you're with someone for 150 years, where are the points of convergence? What does it look like to have a dynamic, fruitful, curious life? Or are you at the other end of the spectrum where actually what you do want is routine and similarity, and you have something which is predictable and nourishing in that way? The state intervention thing was very draconian and pretty grim. But then also there's sort of, it raises questions about how we make meaning.
Yeah.
And she says, till death do us part. There was a movie, I can't remember what the name of it, I was trying to search for it this morning, where everyone stays young, and the thing that changes is the time that you're allocated based on the value that you provide society. And so there's a scene where, I can't remember who the actors were, where these two actors come together and they look like they're 30, but one is the mother and one is the son. And he's successful and has made all this money, so has all of this time. The mother is ticking. Is it called In Time?
I think so.
And the mother's about to die because her bar is basically going down, and he tries to reach her in time and she dies. So it's things like that. Like, there's always been value based on something that is life, and whether it's a body that dies or time that runs out, I don't know. I think there are certain ways in which we can't cheat time. We'll see. Just some initial thoughts.
Brilliant.
And
Quickly, I would just say that I appreciate this insight about wanting novelty while wanting the familiar at the same time. I always think of Joseph Campbell's idea of the womb with a view. Which is
God!
No, but it's this.
Oh, that's such a grim idea. You can tell it wasn't a man that came up with that.
No, but
That wasn't a woman that came
you
up
think so? Okay, well, I think he was talking about it in the idea of being safely held in a protected psychological environment where things are predictable and familiar.
Yeah.
So you're safe, but you're simultaneously have an open horizon.
If you can't get through it, like if you're just in a... Ooh. Okay. Clearly hit something in my psyche.
Well, okay, Allen Ginsberg, the beat poet from the 60s, he used to be a big advocate for like psychedelic expansion of consciousness, and he used to describe his favorite headspace, again, talk about like the ideal psychological state, as buoyant, floating attention, like a rubber duck in the bathtub of the universe. Maybe you like that one better.
That's better.
Okay, so you're like a rubber duck. You're just bopping along, feeling groovy. You're in the bath. It's warm. It's nice, but it's the bathtub of the universe. You're like beholding galaxies, you know. So I've always wanted both of those things because I love expansion, but I also love to feel safe. It's a big one for me, you know. And so that made me think of that time.
And Kevin, what did you feel?
Yeah, so for me, there was a feeling of helplessness. This perfection, this biological ascendance of health and youth and so forth, and then grinding into this machine that is unyielding and just doesn't care. Yeah. And it was interesting to see them deal with that. I think it taps into a little bit of what we're feeling these days of, there's a lot of hidden algorithms, hidden machinery that are driving us or changing our world or manipulating us and getting more complex to the point where it's hard to even understand. And our early experiments on this with social media, for example, have been mixed.
Yeah.
And so, seeing the, sort of this, this kind of, end game kind of version of it really kind of brought back to me to today, the little bit of existential helplessness of that people are I think, going to feel as things are changing more and more quickly, feel a little bit less grounded. Is the rubber ducky going over the waterfall? There's definitely, some of that was my emotional imprint. But that sense of like the state knows best, but the question of any algorithm is what is it optimizing for?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So my question to all the three of you is, so there's a lot of sublimality in the movie that we had put in. And there was a lot of intentionality in terms of how we constructed the movie. Okay, if you look at the guy and the girl, they're dressed well, and basically, so they had freedom of choice in the way they had decorated things, and like, you know, there's pictures of them, like, you know, in the hallway about all the memorable moments they had in life, and they're happy and all that stuff. And the guy who shows up from the state is dressed in dark, in black.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, algorithms turning dark. Right? And so, and then when you look at the girl, when she moves on, she's in yellow. She's moved on. And the guy has a painless death, utopian. So my question to all of you is the dystopia much more scarier than the utopia that you're seeing, or the vice versa?
Can we just have some definitions in terms of what, when you're talking about utopia and dystopia?
Yeah. So
Say a little more.
the algorithms, like, you know, if you look at the perfect, like the guy is wearing a white suit.
Yeah.
That's purity. Utopian, the perfect world. Everyone is cloned the same way. All of the guys who are wandering around in the black jacket, the guy who shows up, the state guys, they're all same. They're unified in one system. They're all thinking alike. And the death is also perfect, painless. That's a utopian world where everything is perfect. That is what, like, the promise of AI is. But we are living in a dystopian world. So what is more scarier?
So to me, there's something in what you said about perfection, the algorithm deciding for you. There is something about a frictionless, predetermined, optimized existence, which reduces potentially suffering in the moment. You're talking about painless death.
Yeah.
I haven't died yet. I have experienced pain. I think everyone on earth who has experienced even a moment of life will have experienced some kind of suffering and pain. And while we don't wish our worst experience on other people, nor would we necessarily want to relive them, that's where we gain insight into compassion, into ourselves, our own limitations. Our capacity to love, I think, is connected with our capacity to feel, you know, the pain of ourselves and others and how we're cared for. And I think things like heartbreak and death and loss, they season a person. And so I think a utopia that removes all of that friction and potential for deepening and seasoning. I'm not talking about unnecessary suffering. I'm not talking about things like torture, rape, imprisonment, those things that we can make different choices about. I'm not talking about that. But something that removes all of that, I think, removes our capacity to grow into what our species can be.
Experience that, you know, I'd rather watch a disturbing and redemptive film that takes me to all those places, but still live in a world where we solved cancer and
Right.
my mom doesn't have to grow old and die. And maybe I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too. Like, okay, like, but like, why not? The whole thing's a mystery. We're suspended in paradox. I don't know where we came from. I don't know where we're going. So why not? Like my soul wants to reconcile my desire for the multidimensional human life, but at the same time not compromise on the finality of that kind of loss. And I'll grant that maybe I'm spiritually immature, you know, but maybe I just retain a childlike insistence on our genius and our poetry. Like, I love this idea of the truth beyond the literal grid, you know, like the idea that somehow fiction can be more truthful than reality. You know, you can tell me that objectively and empirically a film is 120 minutes of like pre-recorded and scripted illusion, but the subjective experience of watching that film can be as real or more real than something that happens in the Euclidean meat space. And altered states of consciousness also hint at time dilation and a kind of presence that seems to go beyond ordinary perception. And so yeah, I agree with everything you're saying about the full range of human experience and still want to insist on alleviating the kind of suffering that puts you on a deathbed versus like symbolic, transformative, psychological suffering, which I think we could just emulate.
So no death.
No death.
I mean,
But does that also then mean no birth?
not necessarily. I mean, you're talking about like overpopulation related issues. Well, you know, you turn people like Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil will talk about how overpopulation is a myth and most of the world is empty space, and you could fit the entire global population in the state of Texas and there'd still be plenty of empty space. The issue is distribution of resources, but if you're imagining godlike technologies at exponentially increasing capacities, the idea that we wouldn't be able to deliver resources, I think, is contextual, and technology is a resource liberating mechanism. And so, again, I can find a reason to stick with my narrative.
That's what makes us human.
Yeah.
We all have a perspective.
Yeah.
Kevin, what about you?
Well, so if you look at the spectrum of where we are to this kind of sanitized utopia, there's quite a bit of distance, and so I would fall on let's roll the dice, and let's crowd out cancer. Let's let's take maybe a little bit of risk of less seasoning, because we've all been through some seasoning that has made us better and some seasoning that has damaged us. Mm-hmm. And and we don't even know what that human experience will be in 50 years or 100 years. What's the human machine interface? What's the human to machine to human? Do we directly transmit our emotions? We don't know what that's going to mean. And so there's a kind of the great FOMO. I kind of want to see what happens. Now, being trapped in it where you couldn't exit, and the government would never let you, or you're trapped in consciousness in an AI, sort of a computer, and you can never get out. Those are pretty bad sci-fi, sort of themes. But between where we are and this kind of sanitized utopia, I'm certainly curious, and I'm somewhat hopeful that there's upside. I'm an entrepreneur. I operate on optimism and realism, but so for me, there's at least this first part that let's knock out cancer. Yeah. Let's see if we can feed people better. Yeah. Help everyone optimize their health. And but I think there's real work to be done. With these kind of discussions of what's it do to our character. Mm. The human hardware has evolved over 100,000 years, and all 100,000 years of it have been infused with hardship. Yeah. So there is something I think really profound to what you're saying is how do you have those experiences? So at 40 I almost died. I had a very bad bike accident. It was real close. Just 2 years ago, my wife had a massive brain tumor, and massive surgery, and then was able to. We got the best healthcare and is able to recover and is back. She's 95%. She's doing amazing. Wow. And those experiences, they could have made you kind of cynical or whatever. I kind of chose the glass half full, and for me those were carpe diem moments. Mm-hmm. Of hey, I really value, because 40 was too young.
Yeah, and you can just lose everything.
Yeah. But that's how long you used to live, not too many generations ago. So we kind of take it for granted. Hey, you don't live to 40 or 50, you live to 80. What about 120? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We may get to a point where we wish we weren't there, but I'm too curious to not take a look.
I mean, the Greenland shark.
He says in the big grin.
Have you heard of the Greenland shark? They found in the ocean. It's almost 400 years old, and it's navigating around. You're
ask that guy.
Was around during the Gilded Age of the Dutch. Yeah, yeah. I mean, look. The question of not dying and immortality is one thing, but the lifespan of the Earth, the lifespan of the universe. These are dealing in proportions so much beyond us. How about giving us a couple hundred more years just to feel it through, and decide, and just read more books, live in more places, I.
So would you let AI pick someone that you want to live with, and if AI tells you that stop loving that person and start loving someone else, would you do that?
I don't think that AI would have a reason to force that upon us. given the fact that I just suspect, my inclination is that what these technologies do is expand our possibility spaces. You know, like Kevin Kelly famously says, like, you know, technology is a double-edged sword, but as long as it creates more choices in the end, that's like a good thing. And that seems like constraining choices. And so I like to think that it's a great thought experiment, but I don't know. I don't think that that's the way it would go.
So the cautionary note is that, maybe AI is going to tell us things, but, more likely it's humans using AI to tell us things and manipulate them maybe for their agenda.
Yes.
And so that's a little bit of, the rich set of themes of the dystopian versions that I think we need to be nervous about. And how does that play out? And so we have to get a little bit better at electing people that can be entrusted with the ever increasing power of that technology.
The fact that we can be so brilliant and so awful at the same time, that like one human can be like, man, this person reminds me that humanity can achieve anything, and then someone else can just be like, wow, like we haven't evolved at all. Like what a brute this person is. And the fact that our species produces individuals that can be both of those things continues to be the thing that haunts me the most.
Yeah.
I think there's also a systemic question. You're talking about people using technologies in service to certain ideas, values, motivations, and thinking about longevity. One of the things that one reads about if you sort of read science fiction or history books is that whenever there's two things: the longevity of a system that produces ecological nooks, if you like, for certain people with certain character traits to thrive. So the masks and the kind of the Caligulas of this world, let's say. And then the flip side, which is individuals who do not seem to become wiser or more compassionate with time, who become more entrenched. You mentioned these wounds that cannot be healed. And I think a lot of the leaders that we see who are in it to acquire power and to dominate others have wounds that have not been touched and haven't been able to find resolution of some kind or healing. So if you have a system where people are living longer, those who acquire the power to extend their lives are the ones with the greatest resources. Typically, they're the ones in a current system that will be able to extract, dominate, and then essentially prolong their own lives. You're completely shifting kind of these evolutionary dynamics that mean that even the most cruel of dictators will die. What does that mean? Does that mean more revolutions? Does that mean more bloodshed? Does that mean, like, if we can't find on a self-sustaining earth that is much longer lived than we are, if we cannot find a way to sustain the resources available to us and acknowledge that we are all interrelated, how the are we going to use AI in service to anything other than the destruction of our species? I'm sorry, but like we need to change the systems and the assumptions, and we have not gotten there yet.
Yes, absolutely.
At the same time, I am a fervent lover of humanity and of life, and I think that at the darkest point in human history, when you look backwards, often it's in these most dark moments before dawn where things are lost that something shifts. And I would love to believe, like at the deathbed, whatever, that there is a way in which we don't. You mentioned with the film that we don't have to get to that point in order to have this phase transition into something else. I would love to believe that that's true, and I think it is true. The future is not yet written, much as the tech overlords would like us to believe it is. And so the question is, how can we learn from all of the wealth of knowledge that we have through cultures throughout the world to be able to create conditions for different systems to emerge so that AI and any other kind of technology can help us reduce suffering? Like that, I think we're all fairly aligned.
Fully with you.
That kind of,
That's
maybe
why
we have
we're
different
here.
visions as to how that works, but
That's why we're here.
So this gets back to the algorithm. What do you optimize on? And so we're building this machine. It's a statistical machine. It's a calculating machine. But what is it going to calculate? And what's it going to do? And I think that this is an area, and Shekhar, you've spoken really inspiringly on this topic of how do we build some of this in now, kind of before it's too late. And so that's why I think this is an urgent moment to bring the cross-functional expertise of the world together. On this couch, but on all of them. Into how do we look at this from the different angles to understand what that impact is going to be on us. And the psyche, it's an experiment we've never run.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, it's interesting. I can't help but want to bring up the subject matter of awe. You know, my entire YouTube series is called Shots of Awe. I've been making videos about the subject of awe for 12 years, and it's the reason is that I have found sort of that confrontation or that direct encounter with that which exceeds our mental maps. You know, the Greater Good Science Center in Berkeley, the work of Dacher Kelter describes awe as an experience of such perceptual vastness or such perceptual expansion that our assumptions, the mental models of the world that we use to orient ourselves, are forced into a state of humbling accommodation. Like they just completely dissolve, right? And the mental health crisis right now, one of the sort of transformative interventions is there's the return of psychedelics and the idea that these psychotechnologies, because they are technologies, can put us into places beyond our maps where we can encounter the mysterium tremendum, like the full sort of naked encounter with the mystery of being, and how that ends up having these incredibly pro-social effects. Like what happens is this humbling accommodation before the mystery like makes us more compassionate, makes us have more well-being, you know, makes us want to extend our hands to others. Like there's just something that happens, you know. Now, granted, it has to do with setting and context in which people partake in these psychotechnologies. You can also have ego inflation. You know, a lot of these Silicon Valley tech bros have taken psychedelics and haven't become necessarily more compassionate and more empathetic. But I just feel like artists, psychedelics, consciousness, you know, more works of beauty, that these are things that could move mountains potentially. I've always felt that a great work of art can change the world, a great film can change the world. I mean, my heroes are people like Chris Nolan, you know, he makes a film like Oppenheimer. Like, how does that change potentially the conversation we have about nuclear weapons? But look, everybody's affected differently. But like for me, like when I encounter transcendent art, when I encounter experiences of awe, I sometimes feel, it becomes at least self-evident in my experience. I'm like, oh, this is the path. This is how everybody changes. This is how we scale a shift in consciousness, you know.
So
Could be wrong,
let
but-
me provoke a little bit more. Like, not that I'm trying to be a provocateur. But so in all of this, we are assuming that we don't lose agency in all of this, right? But I see us losing agency every day. Let me give you an example. Okay, and we'll go after many examples like that. As I said, I grew up in India, and I used to walk 45 minutes to my school. Me and my brother, we used to hold our hands, we used to walk to the school. There was a lot of pain, but we absolutely loved the fact that we were going to a temple. For me, education is like going to a temple. And we loved the struggle. 45 minutes going in, 45 minutes coming back. Then someone took pity on me when I was in 10th grade. They were like, these guys like are living in slums. Maybe they deserve a bicycle. But they gave me a bicycle, okay? So the same distance, point A to point B, took me 15 minutes. And relieved a little bit of my pain. I got a little efficient in my life. It got me from point A to point B. And I thought, boy, this is good. This is fantastic. And then I basically, this is Uber before Uber, by the way.
Yeah.
Like everyone like talks about Uber. Like technology has only replicated what we've been already doing most of the time.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Okay.
So I used to take this something called shared auto rickshaw. Okay, you just get into an auto rickshaw with 10 unknown people, pay like someone 5 rupees, and then you can go from point A to point B. So if I get lazy someday, using my bike, I now had an option
Yeah.
to take an auto rickshaw. So that was my recommendation engine in my head. Cycle or auto rickshaw. Then I came to United States. I didn't have a car for 3 years, by the way. I used to like go around with my friends. Then I got into a car. Took me from point A to point B. All I had to use was accelerator, a brake, and just put my hands and my fingers on the steering wheel. Efficient way to go from point A to point B. Now we are getting into the age of autonomous cars. You don't lose your brain at all. Imagine my son gets into an autonomous car, never has driven a regular car. What the is he going to do? And that's happening everywhere, by the way. We have taken our cognitive and said, here's the best movie, recommend, I'll keep watching. Here's the memes, I'll keep watching. So this is happening more and more and more. I have an example. I just want to read this example to you guys. So this is Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, by the way. We talked about the state and whether the state can influence a decision, by the way. Okay? Allegheny County. They have created an algorithm that scores family when the child abuse and neglect is reported. Predicts the likelihood of child removal. The family can't see their scores. The Department of Justice is investigating bias. And they have an app called Hello Baby. Hello Baby. Okay? That Hello Baby app, it gives you two options to opt in or opt out. One, when you have delivered the baby and you have too much paperwork going on. And a postcard that shows up in your mail that you may forget. And if you are ever recorded, you're always in the list to be taken away. The child to be taken away. That's the reality, my friends. So the movie is not far-fetched. And this is also happening in corporate today. Think about Microsoft and Google. They have a network study. And you may be spending time with like your friends and your co-workers for a lot of time. And they then decide and say, that person should not work with this person. Their performance is better if they went to a different team altogether. They get reallocated. Reallocation is happening in corporate settings. Reallocation is happening in a childbirth because of abuse or whatever it is. And there is also an app in China, by the way, where they're actually taking the Alipay's credit score and saying you're no longer eligible to travel or date or have marriage. And there's a social credit system in one of the states in China where you have to disclose everything and they will decide whether you need to get married or not. That seems rather
Horrible.
horrible. And we are taking all of that data and creating all of these algorithms and biasing the systems, and it is going to be recursive and it is going to make bad decisions.
Yeah.
That is my worry.
So on the darker side of this, so I've always said that, Orwell was an optimist because he never understood the power of machine learning. So
True.
It's powerful in both directions.
Yeah.
And so this is back to the state, right? And that heartless, chilling, version in the film is something really to be afraid of.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt that humans in control of AI in places where you have a political system or a governmental system where it's not really about human rights or fundamental freedoms and whatnot is terrifying, because it just makes those kinds of governments more powerful and more able to control us. And that's about as scary as can be.
And we are in a democratic country, by the way.
I
we
mean,
have
no-
Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, by the way.
It's ugly, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's where it's up to culture, artists, rebels, tricksters. I mean, to create the conversation that keeps this thing from happening. I mean, look, that scenario you're saying, I know that it's playing out in many places in the world, and of course that terrifies me. I grew up in Venezuela, and I saw what happens when a government goes tyrannical. I right now I'm living in the Netherlands, which is one of the freest places in the world. Ironically, everybody there goes on their bicycle and has a lot of agency on their bike. Nobody's doing self-driving cars. So there's some return to a very analog village life there in a high trust society where there's not that kind of surveillance. But yeah, no, look, what you're saying terrifies me. and there's no real rebuttal against it. It's legit. We just have to, I guess, speak out, right? I mean,
But I think also so thinking about democracies and what democracy actually is and the different versions of democracy that exist, and it being kind of not even just a spectrum but a constellation of different expressions of systems where people have more or less agency to vote in people to represent their values, ideals, etc. There are places in the world, like for instance Taiwan, where Audrey Tang used digital tools to democratize a system in which people felt like they were alienated from the decisions being made by their government. And so to create a system, it was almost the anti-Twitter back in the day before it became X, where rather than upvote antagonistic content that would split people from one another in different groups, it upvoted those points around which there was greater consensus. And so you can actually, depending on the intention and therefore the architecture that you create around it, create greater social cohesion and a better cultural condition within which people can thrive using digital technologies. And I think one of the things that we're seeing across different parts of the world, I don't know how much you've been kind of tapping into this, but these quote-unquote Gen Z rebellions happening when social media platforms have been shut down, but they go to Discord, or, for instance, people not using iPhones and Google phones, whatever, they go to mesh networks. This is something that I've read about quite a bit in Spain. Not necessarily smartphones, but they're resilient. And there are other ways to organize in such a way as people can have a greater sense of collective agency. And when we think about agency for whom and within what kind of context? If you're thinking about, like in that film, and you mentioned Amsterdam, there is something about having this sensation of being held within a relational field of goodwill in a community that broadly is aligned with certain values. So democratic societies that want to be able collectively to cycle their kids to school without having to wear helmets because people are being careful, and that's what. So I think we'll end up accelerating these pockets where in some countries there'll be a greater alignment, super alignment between the technologies being used not to surveil and create credit systems and keep people apart from one another, but to enhance the quality of life so that the gains that are made through technology can actually embed themselves in a functioning, economically, agriculturally, societally, like healthy and wealthy environment. So if you get access to cancer cures or to personalized education or whatever it is, your society is robust enough because it's been supported to support itself that it can benefit from those sorts of advances. So I think we're going to see pockets where countries go for the individualistic, gung-ho technology, surveillance data, selling it to the highest bidder, and then there'll be everything in between, and those societies go, that's not what we want. Mm-hmm. Finland, Denmark, using copyright on people's faces and biometrics so they cannot be sold to AI companies. It's a very swift, fairly simple innovation in law or application of law. Anyway, so we're going to see different places doing it very, very differently.
You see, you are an example of somebody that makes me think everything's going to be okay.
I don't think it is going to be okay. I think some people...
Well, no, but I'm saying the way you think, and if other people think like you,
but we have to fight
you
for
get
it.
brought to be the policy head of this. And
Oh, God, no.
No, but you're a public person. You're out there thinking these thoughts, articulating them so eloquently. I'm just saying, everything you just said was just spot on and brilliant, and was in diametrical, parallel to the scenarios that he was painting. So I was just I was listening to you. I was like, yes, more like her.
But it was to your point about creating cultural conditions, and what you were saying also about in service to whom and for what. But then who gets to decide?
Who gets to decide?
And you have to build a system that brings it. Ultimately, the idea of democracy is that how do you reflect the will and the good outcomes for people.
Yeah.
And technology is in a position to really do that instead of a representative one where it's sort of it's a first approximation of the general beliefs of what someone wants. But if we at all times knew what everyone wanted and what would be good for them and made decisions in a way that was good for many people, the world could get better. The decisions could reflect that. But it used to be we lived in a monolithic culture. We had 3 television channels. You could like either Elvis or the Beatles, and those are your choices. And it was very sort of homogenous. Now we're in a hyper sort of heterogeneous branched out state.
How heterogeneous is it? Because I think at least back in the day, you'd have when I was at school, we would have you'd have the hippies, and you'd have the prog rockers, and you'd have the emo kids, and you could see there was
4 or 5 types.
buffet of and you could migrate between them if you liked, whatever. And now I think there's a difference between heterogeneity and fragmentation.
Yeah.
And hyper-personalization.
Solipsism.
Yeah, and then also
Yeah.
look at the generated AI all the voices of anything generated by large language models. It's the same. There's no distinctiveness, no taste, no differentiation, no macro trend to go, oh, that's the macro trend, I'm going to do a counter thing over here. Like it's a bit like Blur. It's like you mix all the colors on the palette and you end up with this kind of mushy brown gray.
Yeah. Well, the fragmentation, I think, is the word. And, right now you have people that are using that to turn them against each other because it serves their purposes. And so, can we have a heterogeneity and, sort of diversity, which you then roll that up into, sort of better outcomes. It's going to require people, with voice and with power to do that. So I'll second the motion. So the idea is, how do we, sort of insert, and, from the technology point of view, this is something that we've been, talking, quite a bit about is, are there places that we can start to insert this kind of virtue, this kind of good into the processes in a very explicit way?
Shekhar, like what can you tell us a little bit? I know you're hosting, but you're at the heart of the storm here. What are some of the ways in which you are doing this? That you talk about angelic intelligence and these virtues. Can we hear a bit about that?
So the fundamental problem that I see in the world is that we are taking garbage data and recycling all the garbage data to create more garbage output, right? And there is this, like, sort of the paradox of like aggregation. Like, we assume the mundane that we see of the human is the real human. It's not the real human. The variances and the extraordinary moments is actually what makes a human human. And we're not able to capture those. I'll give you an example. Like, like in our house, I remember this very distinctly. We had like one bowl of rice. Okay? And my next door neighbor came and asked for rice. Guess what my mother did? She took the bowl of rice and gave it to her. That, from an economist perspective, is irrational behavior. That, according to optimization, is wrong behavior. That, according to anyone out there, is irrational and stupid, outright. Because there is a family of 8. Why are you not feeding the family of 8 and worried about the next door family? But what she tried to do in all of this is display great virtue, care, compassion. And we are not able to capture these kinds of story to really train our models. We are training that, like, someone who was abusive or someone who had a bad credit history is not qualified to date someone. That's what Alipay trying to do with Blythe, app, which is the dating app, trying to do. So we have a fundamental problem with data, the way we think about it. And all decisions that are out there are not really binary 0-1. We as humans operate in a shade of gray. So where is that goodness captured in the models today? I don't see that. And if you let machines make more decisions on our behalf and give the agency to the machines to make those decisions, we're going to end up with a lot of like crappy shit.
Yeah.
And that is my biggest worry, and that's what we are trying to address. So my question to you guys, based on the movie that you just saw, would you let an algorithm decide who the partner is? Would you do that?
No thanks.
What about you?
Hell no.
What about you?
No, I think that I think it would be. Well, I think first of all, chemistry, connection, attraction, these things have an intuitive dimension, strictly non-rational dimension, and I think that the non-rational, I think, is part of what makes us human. Right brain, left brain. Like there's room for empiricism and rationality, but there is a need for the Dionysian, for vitality, for the non-rational. We have sometimes things that we want to satiate that are inherently non-rational. And I still think the non-rational can be languaged, maybe not with ordinary language, but certainly with poetic language. When I have conversations, for example, with ChatGPT, I usually press the button where I can speak, and I'll just go and riff for minutes at a time, which then it immediately transcribes and then will reflect back. And what I find is that it can totally meet me in places that can make sense of my non-rational discourse. And sometimes I've been able to squeeze it for advice that is insightful, like a very good student. I'm fully aware that I'm the one planting the seed with the input, with the prompt, and I'm speaking, and that prompt is coming out with certain speech patterns, certain poetic references. I'm well aware of what I'm doing to get the answer that I want from my student in the way that I present the inquiry.
Would you let an algorithm pick your partner?
Well, I think that I would be persuaded to take a closer look at someone after I was like, help me make sense of this. And then if my student surprised me and said and connected the dots based on my input in a way that I didn't expect, I would go on a date with their suggested person. But ultimately I would follow my intuition. But I would be open for the recommendation if that's the question. I would.
But most of the data suggests
Hedging your bets.
most of the data suggests that love fades away over a period of time.
Hang on, what research suggests that?
I'm just saying, like, that's what people say all the time.
No, wait. So, can I just stop you there a minute? So, I remember all the way back in Psychology 101, we were looking at cross-cultural studies on love as they reflect in different cultures. And I remember one of the studies we looked at was in religions that have, and my mum was from Iran, and this doesn't always happen, but suggested or arranged marriages. In India, this still happens sometimes. In Iran, it still happens.
Oh, mine is one.
Right. So, and I'm like, well, that's for another conversation. It's not relevant to this necessarily. But in those cultures, if the people involved in the arranged marriage are respectful and non-abusive, which is a big if, then typically the reports of love over time actually increase because it's not predicated on erotic, chemistry-based love, which in most partnerships subsides over a period of time. Depending on the research that you read, it can be shorter or longer. In Western societies, which prioritize individual choice, erotic love, matchmaking outside of a potentially religious context, citations of love can reduce over time. Divorce rates are up to 50%, what have you. But when we talk about love, we don't have many words to talk about it. You're not talking about agape or eros, or you just, what does it actually mean? And so you mentioned earlier about this potential for different models of relationship, whether it's polyamory or monogamish, or whatever it might be, or like a life partner and then lust or love partner, whatever you want to call it. And so I think we've got to be quite careful about how we describe love.
Yes.
Because it's not one monolithic thing by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, in the movie, it seemed to have been growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were doing good.
They were doing great.
And
That's from the States.
we've been married, going on 28 years, and it's great. And now there's phase changes. You change what it means.
Yeah.
But in terms of human connection, I think and back to the hardware, right, and how we've evolved. There is something of where you depend on interpersonal relationships, and there's that shared kind of there's a safety and there's no one else who understands you better, and in a world that's of more fragmentation, like I think that's important.
But would that not come through more relationship and being with that person versus being recommended something?
Well, so I would bring us back to the science and art. Right, so I'm an old search guy. So can you use a little bit of technology to cut through all the pages on the internet and get your top 10? No, maybe. But like as suggested, I think there's a lot that's not captured in that algorithm.
Yeah.
And a lot that we don't even know how to say, but you know it when you feel it.
Which is where the responsible use of building the technology is super important for
sure,
for the flourishing of the humanity, right? And so the question is not whether we should or not, but how are we training these damn systems in the first place?
But even more than that, if you talk to people who are, again, not thinking monolithically, and this is a generalization, but Gen Z populations who are having, those who are of a kind of active age, having a lot less sex, having a lot less interaction with alcohol, and a lot of people are saying, well, psychedelics are the way, we should be sober. But as a function that allows people to tell truths to one another in a lower stakes environment if they're not massively drunk, and to have that kind of disinhibition. There is something about the ways in which, if we rely too much on our technologies, whether it's social media or dating apps, whatever, to remove that element of risk. Like, I remember when I used to fancy whoever it was in class, you'd slip notes to each other, and the fear of rejection was like, oh my God, are they going to go on a date with me? Or one time I went for a date with someone and they waited for me for an hour and a half, and my train was delayed, and I was like, I'm going to go up and I'm going to turn up, and they're not going to be there. Like, these sorts of things, if we reduce that potential for eroticism, for anticipation, for rejection, that kind of, not that we want to be rejected, it's horrible, but there's something about that longing, that yearning, and if you remove all of that, then you're killing eros.
Yeah, we don't want to lose embodiment.
No.
We don't want to lose deep embodiment, rich environments, and high consequences, which is what.
And excitement.
Yeah,
and that
it
kind of
puts you in the present moment and in a flow state. And what you were speaking to before about like love fading over time, I think you were maybe speaking directly to the idea of like habituation, or like people kind of starting to take each other for granted simply through repetition, And I've thought about this a lot because I am a creature of novelty, and at the same time I'm a romantic. I love the idea of loving somebody over time, and I've always felt like, well, what's the hack here? Like one of the things that can make you, for example, revivify the high of connecting with somebody. It's like boosting dopamine. So if there's some habituation, maybe you don't have to switch partners, just switch the context.
Yeah.
Let's take a trip somewhere. Like, let's just go to Japan together and get lost and see how that radical novelty pushes us together and forces us to see each other in new ways. Let's ritualize couples MDMA therapy 4 times a year.
Wow,
let's incorporate like cannabis and gypsy jazz on walks in nature. I'm telling you.
This is like a dating app, guys.
Yes, like I just think that like I have cultivated a series of my own sort of psychological interventions and ecstatic practices to go back to beginner's mind continuously, to put myself in states of heightened openness, heightened salience, heightened qualitative intensity. Like, these are practices that are part of my lifestyle. I'm very good friends with Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler, who ran the Flow Genome Project, and it's just I think these psychotechnologies and interventions are just as important as like whether we use these digital technologies of optimization to maximally create spaces of connection, both long term and short term.
It's also about knowing.
He's an anomaly.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's an anomaly.
But I don't
And that anomaly is not captured everywhere.
But why does it have to be captured? Why do you have to can't we just create conditions for people to experience? Not everything has to be quantified.
He's looking for training data.
Yeah, I'm looking for training data.
No. Let's retain some mystery.
No, but this is exactly the point of
all of us for training data.
exactly in our own person, right? So, but I think like the beauty of this conversation is like we are all so different and we have so many different opinions about what makes it right. And so that's the anomaly, that's the human, right? And so we try to basically assume that all humans are alike.
Which we're not.
Right? And we are training these models with all that like philosophies. And so longevity is a very beautiful topic. Very beautiful topic. And I'm like super confused myself. Like whether I want to live long or I want to die early. Okay, to be honest. My mom just passed away 4 weeks ago.
Wow.
Okay. And she was instrumental like in shaping me into the person I am today. When we had nothing, she believed in me, and she saw something beyond anyone else saw. That's what moms do, right? And she passed away at the age of 70.
Oh, so wow.
And let's say like I live up to 250 years. Would I be diminishing her sacrifice, or would I be celebrating her sacrifice? I don't know. And so my question to all of you is, what would you do if you lived up to 200 years?
In what kind of body?
Yeah. Well,
Make up your own body.
the first question is health span.
Yes.
Yeah.
The second mystery is what happens to the human mind after 150 years. Like we haven't run that experiment, but let's assume that it's not doesn't go into a psychotic,
Totally.
crueler, sort of, some of my favorite books touch on those kind of, cruel endings. But let's say that we can remain, curious and optimistic and so forth. Like, for me, there's, as the world has changed and I'm discovering things and learning things, what keeps me feeling young is staying curious and
Yes.
learning. And so, what would I choose to do? I would choose to just keep learning.
Same.
And there'll be new things. I love astrophysics, so I geek out. I read all this stuff, and we're learning new things from the James Webb, and looking at the galaxies at the edge. And so for me, there's a constant that's part of the human experiment that I think is really sort of reverent, is this wanting to understand and learn and then bring that back into hey, can we learn these things and make the world a better place? So to me, I would try to take that optimistic kind of youthful energy and keep it going. I wouldn't want to be kind of old and boring, even at 200.
Are you financially prepared for it? Let's say
No one is.
let's say 5 years down, and there's science which is telling you right now. David Sinclair, right, from Harvard University, he's saying you can take a pill in 10 years from now and you can live up to 250 years. 4 pills. Are you financially prepared for that?
Well, so this is back to the health span and the energy, because we're probably not going to retire at 60.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And honestly, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I've looked at this a lot, and there's a lot of people that retire, they go from 100 to 0, and then 3 years later, they're dead.
Yeah.
Right. And there's many factors to this, social isolation, all that. But for me, it's the mental, the curiosity, the not learning thing, and not giving back. And so for me, with retirement, I think about it, and it's a dial. Like I don't want to stop doing things. I don't want to stop giving back or contributing or paying it forward. In fact, I find that incredibly energizing. It's exothermic. To work with young people, to help them out, to learn new things. So for me, that I don't think that you have to stop being economically, kind of contributing, and it'll throw the whole system into disarray. But here we are. But we won't be retiring at 1/3 of the way in, unless AI and robots are doing it all, and we're in a post scarcity world or something. But to me, I think that's why the health span and keeping it going. You're not going to be able to be, I don't think, sort of useless for 100 years.
Yeah. Well, I think the
What about you, Natalie?
please.
No, go on. Finish your thought and I'll...
Well, I was going to say, I mean, post-scarcity, I would think, is a prerequisite for a world with radically extended lifespans. I mean, if all of these transformations are happening in biotech and health span and whatnot, I also think it'll happen in the productivity allowed by AI and universal high income, whatever it may be. So then maybe people can just orient their lives around joyful curiosity. That gets me very excited. You mentioned the Hubble Space Telescope. There's this great article by Ross Anderson that sort of contemplates the insights of the images of the deep field and so on and so
The deep field
forth.
blew me away.
Totally. You know what he says? It allowed us to mainline space and time through the optic nerve. This idea that we're fitting the universe through our brain, the kind of genius or the kind of mind that conceived of an instrument that allows us to fit the universe through the optic brain, just sitting in that vastness, both intellectually thrilling vastness, psychologically expansive vastness. And I think to myself, I'm more of that. And then it just hits against entropy and limitation and lifespan, I'm just getting excited. I feel like Jodie Foster in the movie Contact, when she goes through the wormhole, she's finally seeing the celestial event and she's like, they should have sent a poet. They should have sent a poet. Carl Sagan is one of my heroes. He called himself a wonder junkie. So I really resonate with your enthusiasm, your joyful curiosity. And I think that's the engine that wants to just remove all constraints on joyful curiosity. So get rid of diseases, get rid of lifespan limitations, get rid of unnecessary suffering, and just allow us to have joyful exploration, forever. Having invented the gods, we can turn into them. This is what Alan Harrington said, you know.
Well, and so, as a thought experiment, if you remove many of the traditional frictions,
Yeah.
that we use, to in some cases to grow and to advance, right?
Okay.
Is there a way to substitute them? Maybe I set a new goal for myself of I'm going to discover this, and I haven't discovered it yet, and now I'm feeling despair because I'm not there yet, and I'm not dying of cancer, but I'm still going through that same learning and seasoning motion, perhaps. I don't know. It could be that we find new ways to keep growing. That's my hopeful side. Maybe not.
I mean, I think there's an interesting idea about you mentioning about retiring at 60 and what happens, that you fall off the cliff edge potentially. And I think there's something about the ways in which we've structured many of our societies where purpose and a feeling of usefulness, not necessarily utility, because I think these are separate things, but this sense of being useful to and belonging with a group of people often is connected with work and what we do. From a flip side to that, and it's again this idea of purpose, got me thinking about Carl Jung and this idea of self-individuation, that when we hit what the moment is for those of us who are lucky to live up to 80, 90, half point of our lives, like around 40, that's when you tend to find people come into a greater sense of questioning around service. And you mentioned service and what?
Purpose.
And purpose, yeah, that you've kind of conformed to the acculturated norms of what it means to potentially have a marriage or have kids or whatever it might be. And then you come to the point of, okay, how can I be of service in this world? What does it mean to actually live when death is now perhaps as close as my birth was to this midpoint of my life? And so I wonder if you extend the lifespan and there's still the horizon of mortality, do we still have that sense at age 40, for instance, or thereabouts, of wanting to become in greater service to something? And then do we just have a longer time frame in which to actually pursue those things? Like for me, thinking about, I like sort of these idea of these models of self-determination where you have the idea of being able to really deepen your mastery and your belonging in the world and your autonomy. Mastery, I would love to dedicate 50 years of my life to my painting, 50 years of my life to my music. And at the moment it's like, I've got a month here, I'll do a week, I've got a month here. I'm living 5 lives already, and I don't want to have kids because I don't have the drive or the desire for it. I'd rather be a steward for other people's, lives and kids. But even that's tangential, or like wanting to be someone who looks after animals or who gets to learn about, ethnobotany. Like there's so many things I want to deepen my mastery in that are in service to life, but to your point about aperture and openness and your joyful curiosity. But I also wonder if that's something where already you've come to the point where, and you mentioned you're kind of this, it's almost like an existential grapple with the fear of death and loss of your loved ones, perhaps more than even for yourself. Like,
Also
where do
for
we,
myself,
also,
yeah.
okay, so for your own life and for the life of those you love, like, how do we begin to grapple with these things and with the people who are most wounded, who potentially could derail the joy seeking for the rest of us, when we're not all just plugged into this hedonistic, give me the hits now, but this more eudaimonic, meaning-filled, what's a life well lived? And then how do you create, like, so for instance, thinking about criminal justice systems or leaders who are trying to just everybody over because there is not another way that is known to them yet.
Yeah.
And then
So-
who gets to decide? Because it's also, I'm making a judgment that our way is...
See, I'm not a
Better
psychologist
than-
or a social psychologist and I never would understand it. But my question is, if you had more time, would you procrastinate more?
No. Do more. Do more. You've got more time to do more.
Yeah.
Or do you want to do more?
More.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would not procrastinate at all.
No.
It would
But
just
what
take-
is the general human tendency though? Like
But can we
let's talk
talk
about
about
like
the
let's
general
forget the
human?
intellectuals. Let's talk about common people. Like would they, if they had more time?
But I don't think the issue for most people is more time. I think the issue is, how do I feed my kids?
That's right.
How do I put a roof over my head? How do I make sure that my mum's taken
Yeah.
care of and has the meds that she
Yeah.
needs,
Yeah.
or is able to go to hospital to
Yeah.
save her life? Like,
Yeah.
that's the issue. I don't think the issue that is time. The issue is scarcity of medical, educational, social resources.
Yeah.
So,
But most of the world lives still under the poverty line.
Yeah, because there's a large portion of the minority of the world.
back to the spectrum, you are here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we are here, but
Can we maybe get here and then, have a little bit more of the higher order self-actualization worries?
yes.
Right? Like, I think there's room to do a lot of good.
And especially those who have the luxury and fluke of being born in a context where we have the privilege to make our actions louder. Like,
Jason,
Yes.
about you? What about you?
I'm just echo with what they've said. I don't have anything.
You want to
say.
keep learning.
And it's like I sometimes mourn for parallel timelines that I haven't been able to act upon, and that I'm incredibly privileged. I've already lived many lives. I think about my life when I lived in LA, or my life now living in Amsterdam, and the life that I haven't had yet, where I'm just like, I just want to spend like 3 years walking pilgrimages in Japan. I just read this book about this guy who's walking Japan. Like, it's called Things Become Other Things. It's marvelous. Like, you read 5 pages and you're like, I want to go do this for a couple of years, and I don't want to like be counting the clock and thinking what age I am and do I have kids yet, and I'm not married, and what does this mean, and my dad, I want to spend more time with my dad. I feel constrained. Now maybe, it could be that I this is just my wiring and this is just her wiring, but I don't know. Like I think that like if given the opportunity and the inspiration, and if people weren't fighting to survive and weren't in the survivalist mindset, I imagine in the future a kind of university campus upbringing for people where it's like the movie Dead Poets Society, and people are just like going to classes on whatever subjects they want because you study whatever you want. You sit in bean bags. You learn, you get excited. Like I sort of see that I listen to how things feel, and that's how I decide like what I want, and like what I feel is I want to be in a state where I'm learning and growing, and the horizon just keeps expanding, and I don't feel the existential constraint of time, entropy, loss, and all these things. I just talk about frictions. I see them as like a fist in the stomach.
Let's imagine that you did everything you could do in 200 years and you can live up to 250. What would you do the next 50 years? You did everything. You went all over the world. You did you went to Mars, came back.
It's not what it's cracked up to be.
That's not on my list.
Not mine either. Send Musk to Mars. Just, let them succeed, and they can just.
I'm sure he will go.
Leave us to the rest of us.
With the 1 trillion pay package, I'm sure he's going to go.
So today the decision is made. Today people they lose energy. They're deteriorating, and some people will feel like, hey, this is my time, and that's the natural envelope that that our biology has delivered, and it's a miracle that we can live 80 years, right? It's crazy, but that's the status quo. Is there a point where you've just exhausted everything that there is to be learned, and there's nothing more to be felt, and you can't feel joy anymore or learn? Well, yeah, maybe that's back to my opt-in, opt-out. Like I wouldn't want to be trapped forever. Where you could never choose, and then you lived in that of gray, bland despair. Maybe that's a different sort of equation that we need to think about in that world. But today, before you want to, for a lot of people, you lose the physical energy, the mental energy, the acuity, all of the things that would have allowed you to keep learning. And for me, at my age, I'm leaning into. I'm in 2 bands right now, right?
Good for you.
And I'm playing with my daughter, and she's an incredible musician. And then a singer in other bands, 24, and I'm showing them our music, and they actually have great music taste, but they're showing us the new music I haven't heard, and so I'm not feeling any kind of asymptotic approach to boring yet.
Make it optional. Right? Like the people
opt in, opt out
to radical life extension, but even not immortality, but just make it optional. Like I believe in assisted suicide if that's your jam. I think people should be able to choose. And these technologies might at first have this idea that they're only available for the rich, but that's when they don't work very well, like the cell phone, and it sort of eventually information technologies, the price point goes to almost zero.
Yeah.
Jeremy Rifkin wrote this in the Zero Marginal Cost Society. So I think eventually everybody will have access to this. And so I just think hey man, if you are of enthusiastic disposition, let's keep it going. And those that want to be more Amish-like, and till that's it. They can
still leave it to free will.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
force anybody to stick around if they don't want to.
Yeah,
I want to offer them like guided psychedelic trips to like reconnect them with the joy of living
Oh my God.
before they take their lives. But
See, it's a new business venture.
I know.
totally. Before you commit suicide, let me reconnect you with the wonders of the universe.
So let's assume that you're 25 years old. Let's assume for a second, okay? And then you enter the room with someone who's like 225 years old. Would you like that interaction? And what would be your interaction in the first place?
I would love that. You kidding? All the stories, like right.
Yeah. So I always,
What are the best trips? Food, countries. Tell me everything you've learned.
Totally.
Let's go.
Yes.
Are you kidding? Amazing.
and the inverse is I tell young CEOs, I say, look, you always have to learn from your own mistakes, but it's way cheaper to learn from other people's.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right? So like think of all of the used wisdom and particularly if at 225 they still had a youthful vitality. Some of the reason that young people don't want to be around old people is it's kind of a wet blanket or like it's like a non-joyous kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I had some very energetic 90 plus year old relatives that that I loved being with till the end when I was 20. And it's interesting because at 20 we're not really burdened with that that midlife crisis that you kind of think you'll live forever.
Yeah.
And it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Like I kind of being 20 something is not that bad. I mean,
But the 20s are pretty I don't know about your 20s, but mine were all
they're up and down.
over the place.
There's but maybe those are the friction points that you're learning from. But
sure.
you don't realize how good you had it, like with the fittest body and the sort of all of the freedom and but do I think that not feeling the end makes you not appreciate the current? I'd offer your 20-something self as a counterpoint.
Yeah, Ray Kurzweil was asked about this. They said, don't you think death is what gives meaning to life? And he said, no, I think life is what gives meaning to life. And what you do with life, which is to create art and knowledge and whatnot. It's not a complex answer, but it was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. I don't need death for life to be meaningful. I think the things that life encompasses, are what are deeply meaningful, and it's precisely why death seems like this existential tragedy, like beyond measure, like that the kind of heart, the kind of mind that made Beethoven's music, the kind of heart, the kind of mind that writes poetry, and I just like what like. That what they felt, what they like for them to be eliminated. I can't understand that contrast. I'm not equipped to make it make sense for me at the moment. And I think that any attempt to romanticize it is a psychological, way of acquiescing to something that would otherwise drive us psychotic. Ernest Becker in his book The Denial of Death, great psychoanalysis, an analytic book from the 70s. Said that the awareness of mortality drives human beings mad, and that there's 3 solutions, psychological solutions that we use to deal with death awareness, because we're the only animal that's like aware of its death long term. The religious solution, the romantic solution, and the creative solution. So the religious one is like, well, death isn't real. We go back to God and everything's good. The romantic solution is we'll put them on a pedestal, and so now I'm like merging with my God by putting them on a pedestal. But your gods eventually reveal their clay feet, so that also collapses. And then the creative solution, in some way, another sublimation. I'm like, well, I'm finding transcendence in my self-expression, and so death falls away temporarily. And I always found that to be a very persuasive thing, because without those things, just like staring it in the face is a tough thing, I think.
But do you not think impermanence is fundamental to life?
Maybe. Still terrifying.
I know, it is still very, yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand it. And what I mean by not understanding it is that like I don't emotionally understand it. My inner child doesn't understand it. It's incompatible with how love feels to me.
Yeah.
So, let's say I lied to you.
Yeah.
Let's say I lied to you.
Okay.
Okay? And let's say that 25-year-old that you're looking at is actually you. and also the 225 just became you. So all your cells, all your memories, everything is gone. Would it still be you in
That's
that
a
case?
good question.
So then it's subjective.
So you're looking at your
experience.
mirror, that's the 25 and the 225. The 225 just became the 25. The 25 is completely changed. Every cell is changed.
But life doesn't happen
Memories
that way.
are-
It's not just about this kind of building block of it's the subjective experience that we carry, the relationships that we have. We're into being. One can't exist as a separate self. Like I can't exist without. Like life happens in a related way, and I think in much the same way, like the 25-year-old self was doing her best. She was doing a great job, but it's different to who I am now, and hopefully I'm different to who I'll be if I get to be 90, whatever. And I think there's something about that kind of, hopefully, self-compassion for one's younger iteration or being, but then all of the people that you have been and become, it's almost like, the river is never the same river twice. The water is different, but it's still the same river. Same thing with the land or with the boat. If you change a plank, sort of philosophical idea.
And the memory is gone.
The memories shift, but memory is creative. Not unless you've had a traumatic experience in which the memory freezes. Memory is also a creative act. So I think we have this, my sense is we have this desire to grasp our identity or self as a fixed thing. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's kind of like, maybe like an orchestra, which can play different songs and maybe have a certain set of instruments, but the song is always evolving. And if you're lucky, you remember the song that you played when you're 25 with fondness. But it changes. It's not a static, calcified thing. And I think this touches on something that all of us have already touched on, which is this joy and this openness and the vitality. It's that capacity to kind of be in that song or be in that river, knowing that it's not the same and it's not going to be the same and it's different to how it was, and still live with it and flow through it. Something like this.
Yeah, it's like the paradox of like feeling a continuity even as you watch everything change. But that felt sense of continuity, because you could argue that the past has been like is dead. You look at an old photo and like, what is that? Who is that? I'm that. Well, not really. Like every cell has turned over. Like gets back into just like this sort of felt mystery of what it is to be us, But what I do know is I wake up every morning in gratitude, and I like the feeling of an open horizon. Alfred Hitchcock was once asked, "What is happiness?" And he was like, "An open horizon, nothing to worry about." And I'm just like, yeah, the open horizon. It's just like possibility,
Or just chocolate.
Yeah, or just chocolate.
Sorry.
No.
So let's say like these are all hypothetical questions, but like these could be all true, by the way.
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, I'm just like I'm thinking about the future. So let's say like all of your memories that you had for 250 years is compressed into 80, and some are forgotten. Your first love is forgotten. The first baby is forgotten. What happens? What
Life
would you-
unfolds, no? Like,
Well, I'll point out that I've forgotten a lot of things,
Yeah.
and I've still made it through, right?
I'm still smiling.
And some of them are probably adaptive that I did forget them, but that's kind of that's the way it works today. But if you had like this tabula rasa, there's still there's a genetic makeup of what your machine is that would live in some ways a similar life perhaps, and the egocentric wanting your machine to still imprint the world. And so even if I had to forget everything and learn anew, would you still wish that? I think so. I think so, because there's that biological, even if you don't remember it. But the twist on it would be, can I get one page of wisdom from my old self? Can I get one handwritten page?
Cool.
I like that.
How about you, Jason?
Like to be able to get young again but forget everything. Yeah, it's an interesting question. if it was gonna feel like an erasure of total identity, then that's the same as dying, isn't it? So
Close?
yeah, I am.
But would
I
you
don't
want?
know. I don't know. Because I don't know how much of who I was is erased, or, like subjectivity and consciousness is still kind of a mysterious thing. Like sometimes I remember being really little and remember vividly and remember that it was exactly me now, but then. And other times I think, like you said, memory is creative. Like maybe that's just me projecting my current self into the past, and maybe that was.
Maybe it's both.
Yeah. So I don't know how to answer that question, actually.
Well, this kind of amnesia scenario is interesting because there's what you actively remember and you could recount,
Yeah.
but then there's the chips that have been burned in
Yeah.
that allow you to still move as a 25-year-old in the world.
That's right.
And so there's a fair amount of me that is the unspoken, kind of model
Yeah.
of how you can operate as a 25-year-old sentiently, even if you didn't remember anything.
Yeah.
So so there's the hardware layer, there's this trained sort of processing of the world, and then there's the active memory of it. So if I have to lose the top third or the top half or whatever that is, obviously that is a lot of who I am.
Yeah.
But it's maybe not 100%.
So what if there was trauma, there's depression, there's other things? Would you want to retain those memories?
Well, yeah. Then the question is, can you choose which?
Do you want to heal better if you're like living up to 250 and
Can you have all the wisdom and forget the
forget
pain?
all the bad?
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you this one. So, at 40, I had a terrible bike accident. So I had 26 broken bones, punctured lung,
What?
concussion.
Wow.
They took me to the
And then
hospital.
like he still survived and still
No.
playing band.
No, and one more. They took me to the hospital and they accidentally gave me a 10x overdose of morphine.
Oh my God.
With one lung working. So this was kind of this carpe diem reset for me. But the point here of this story is that I don't remember any of it.
What was it like when you came out?
Uh,
When you came to?
Like rough.
Yeah.
But I felt like I'd been run over by a couple more trucks.
Yeah.
But my mind has flushed those. It's done a selective version of what you're talking about, and maybe it's for the better.
Yeah.
And even that whole period of recovery, months of recovery, it's still kind of hazy.
Yeah.
But
that's
is trauma not like somewhat like burnt in your memory?
Well, so here's the question. So, and part of I kind of chose to take this as, hey, I'm lucky. Like I could have been dead, and I'm not. And so now what do I do with with this year? So there's some of that you choose to be grateful, but I think there was an adaptive thing in the human mind that was operating there of all of that pain, that maybe that's not adaptive to keep it all. But I kept if you could take the emotional pain out of it, but still keep the lesson of gratitude.
Yeah.
So I feel like I kind of came out, more than whole from that. And that was a lot of friction. So, but I don't have the explicit memory
Yeah.
of all the pain.
But maybe that speaks to this innate intelligence of the body mind, of not retaining all of that. Because you said something interesting before about some emotional trauma is actually like a stuck memory. Like this guy David Lenson calls it temporal dislocation. So the trauma gets stuck, and you're actually bringing that to the doorstep of every moment. So you're kind of like living as if that past thing was happening to you now, and it's affecting your biochemistry and so on and so forth. And one of the things that happens in psychedelic experience when they do trauma work is that it puts you in a state of consciousness in which not only can you visit the trauma, but dissolve the stuckness of it. They say the body keeps the score. It's that book about trauma. And so that's an interesting thing. It's like to be in a state of consciousness where you feel somatically safe enough to go back to it, visit it, look at it, acknowledge it, and also realize it's in the past. It's not here now, and it doesn't have to be. And so I just think that's how we could potentially deal with that if our body doesn't do it with its own innate intelligence. In your case,
So let's say like, you cheated on someone, or like you were like mean to someone, or you were really bad to someone, and now you're living up to 250 years. Do you want to live with that resentment till that age, or?
Well, maybe that'll be an incentive to behave better since you have to live with it longer.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
But like, just imagine, right?
Yeah.
Like you had only, like, let's say like you're 55 and you did something at the age 50, and like, let's, like, God forbid, let's say like, your like end of life was 70, now extended to 250. You just had that period of resentment for 15. Now it turned into 200 odd years.
Well, maybe that's the new justice. But like, these are the stakes.
These are the stakes.
And also don't forget that and culture adapts as well. Like, so thinking about what was talking about psychological support through psychedelics, or it might have been your local community that discussed these things, or 12-step programs, that you would have to have a cultural context that adapted to longevity in such a way that you find a way to restore some kind of homeostatic balance, or that you carry these things with you, and then that's a way for you to remember not to do these things in the future. So if you said a sharp word or were cruel to someone when you're like 20 or 21, I can remember specific conversations I've had that I wish I had been more thoughtful before I spoke. Like, and and if you're lucky, you remember them, and if you're lucky, you don't create that pattern again. You don't cause further harm. So I think there's also this. Maybe it creates conditions for people to be more compassionate, but it requires being attentive to that and a willingness to want to look inside and to name one's shadows and fears, and to desire to help other people, to accompany other people as they explore theirs. But wisdom is not just individual either. It's collective. It's this cultural embedding of support.
So you're saying that like live to 250 years, but don't screw up, and like you have to repent longer.
There's a human equation. Right?
We'll develop new ways of dealing with it.
Yeah. Good.
Sold. All right, let's all live to 250.
Let's all live up to 250. So let's get into some controversial topics. Okay.
What now? Just
right
now.
Yeah. Would you have the sexual desire at like age 150?
Well, that comes down to, that's one of the questions about youthful vitality and like what's the health span and so forth, right?
Of course.
So like I think, as a human, if you think of what did I have in my 20s or my 40s or my generally there's a desire to carry that forward. So I think that's a part of being human that I like and that many people like. And so like I'd say the answer is, to keep as much of being human and keep it in like, in full color, full, sort of life. That seems like the optimal. I don't know.
Yeah, what you said.
Yes. I think if we are maintaining our homeostasis and we're thriving biologically, I don't see a reason why we would lose any of those faculties.
And also I've read studies that as people get older, if they do still have sexual appetite, which most folks in these studies have, inhibitions go down. So there's less judgment about body, there's less, in your 20s and your 30s and possibly into your 40s now with social media, we're so judgmental about how we look, how am I going to be judged? And as you get older and our bodies get older, it's like, pleasure is primary. Yeah. And that is also a liberation. So I wonder also with that if you get to enjoy more of that, kind of less inhibited joy and pleasure and exploratory focused appetite.
That's one of the parts
Sign
of being
up, like
of getting older that I like is I'm all out of F's, right? Like there's much that I don't care about anymore that used to bother me or weigh me down or I thought I was supposed to worry about and so to me that is the the optimistic case of like, do you shed baggage?
Yes.
Like instead of picking up baggage, do you shed some? I don't know, but that would become part of the philosophy of how do I be a mentally healthy 100-year-old or 150-year-old?
I mean, imagine the sex parties, like with really disinhibited, respectful, consensual. Like it would transform the way that maybe younger people learn about sex too.
I like her Utopia a little bit better.
Just saying. I mean, we could be monogamous, whatever, but like, Yeah.
Well,
So,
yeah.
the
Let's
question
touch
is is monogamy even a thing when you're living 250 years?
Well, I think there'll certainly be challenges to it.
Yeah.
Like in the movie, that there was some statistical sort of approach they used that said that hey, it breaks down and for society's good, either you get with the program or you're dead. I think we'll have to rethink a lot of things if we live to 250, and but having the agency to decide for yourself is part of what I think would make that a lot better, and then society would have to kind of catch up with how it thinks about it.
Yeah, and what kind of monogamy? We're talking about partnership, we're talking about sexual monogamy. There's all kinds of different types of, even if you think about people who've been together a long time, like historical figures like Frito and what's his chops, like designing relationships that work based on the benefits that you bring to each other, the style of relating that works for you, and then that being able to evolve over time.
Yeah, they lived next to each other. They didn't
Yeah.
even live
It's
together.
great.
It's so cool. They had the little bridge connecting their
Yeah.
houses or something.
And she
Yeah.
had lovers, he had lovers. It's
Totally.
turbulent, but it seemed
Like
to
the
work for them.
bohemianism, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I think there'll be a new bohemianism in the future when we have like radical life extension. I think there's going to be all these kinds of quirky ways that we're going to like relate and explore each other. That
Tell me more. I would love to listen.
So, go on then.
Yeah,
Come on.
I sort of. Maybe I'm projecting my own romanticism, but I just think that there will be this kind of like new renaissance of like bohemianism and disinhibition and sexuality and consciousness exploration and wild technologies. If you ever read The Hedonistic Imperative by David Pierce, he writes about like using biotechnology to transform subjectivity and create gradients of pleasure we can barely imagine. I mean, he's just a brilliant writer. I used to read him in college. And so they call him the genomic bodhisattva. And yeah, super cool. It's like kind of like psychedelic transhumanism, so I've always wanted to like bring those things together, it's like, how do you have a psychedelic transhumanism, or this like genomic bodhisattva?
Back to FOMO, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's it going to be?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, and again, if I don't really want to be first in line for brain chips.
Right.
Yeah, God no.
But like, in 100 years, like,
Yeah.
it's nanobots or like,
Totally.
we take a pill and it changes your
Totally.
cell structures. Like, I don't know, but like, we may be different. Like,
That's right.
maybe you unlock 10 more levels of pleasure.
That's right.
Like, give that a shot. I don't know. Maybe it's bad.
No, yeah. I'm not going to carry on. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like this is with all of the magical kind of capability of technology. These are like, this is where science fiction is to me, it's my favorite genre of writing, because it's really it's kind of the MRD for the future.
Yeah.
It's a bit of the blueprint. And in fact, if you look at like Star Trek, and we were talking about that earlier. Star Trek actually drove a lot of inventions, like the tricorder, is your iPhone, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
And so there's this, there's a lot of times where media is the distorted mirror and it reflects back and we get worse and worse.
And
But-
sometimes the opposite.
But sci-fi is, certainly for innovation, is
yeah.
the one where it reflects back and then, reality follows the fiction.
Well, think of how magical that technology is. That we can like use the technology of writing to create something that when you open it, it's true, right? Because the minute you're reading a great piece of science fiction, when you're reading it, it's true. I mean, it's viscerally true. Like, you're there. So it's like, maybe it's a psychotechnology that's like whispering something from the future, pulling the present forward to meet it. Like, we never know. The creativity of the person who wrote it, maybe that was being whispered retroactively from the future. Like,
Yeah, I love
maybe
that.
it's being beckoning,
Some
like,
T-axis kind of
some
thing.
crazy time loop. Like, I don't know. I mean, I think already there are technologies that border on like metaphysical or like that are miraculous, and I think writing is one of them. Like, when deployed in the right way.
Well, I always wanted the holodeck from Star Trek. When you go in, you can choose your risk.
Yeah.
And everything, and it's like VR, but much better than
Totally.
VR. It's like
Totally.
VR without the nausea and the
Totally.
isolation.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let's switch it up a little bit. Like, I know that you guys are all like the optimists I feel like in the room here. So talk to me a little bit about the relational crisis that may come upon you guys. Think about the other extreme that the society should prepare for. Like what type of relational crisis can come if you start living up to 250 years? Whether it's like talking to your great grandchildren and don't even know where they came from.
Sounds
Or-
cool.
I don't know if it's cool or not, but people start dying around you and you're the only one alive.
But then why would you choose longevity?
I don't know. Like, I'm just asking what are
It's
all
like
the
these
different...
vampire movies, you know, or like sci-fi where it's like this 3,000-year feud between my family and your family, and I had this lover and she died.
Yeah.
Or like Philip Pullman's books, I love the Dark
Well,
Materials.
like, let me tell
But
you.
there's the witch, and she has like a human lover, and then he gets older, and he's going to die, and then she carries on Serafina Pekkala, and like, but the cohort of witches live on, and they carry the wisdom of all these other populations that have passed away. Like who gets to be that central population? What are their values? Are there stewards, or are they the people that are just going to extract endlessly from the other? Like, it's back to the same old dynamics.
So I'll tell you why this question came to me for two reasons. Okay, and nothing in my life like just happens by this thing. It's just like all serendipity. Like, I have conversations and I'm translating that conversation back to you. So I one of my mentor is a guy called Jim Cathcart, and I was telling him, like, because I haven't caught up with him for the last. He's a phenomenal speaker. He's probably like keynoted about like 3,000 odd like stages. Very well known in the industry, like phenomenal guy. And I was telling him, sorry Jim, I couldn't meet you. I've been going through a lot of personal trauma. In the sense, my father-in-law passed away, and then my mother passed away, and then right before I left, my father grew up with his uncle, and like their siblings, like so my dad's cousin's husband passed away, and so there's a lot of like people
death.
passing away, right? And I started explaining to him, like, like this is so like painful. Like, you just see all the people that you like loved, and like you want them to be part of your life, and they're just all passing away. He said, like, there comes a time in everyone's life, few times in your life, like when you're like probably 30, 40s, like your parents pass away and all of the people around them pass away. Then when you get to 70, 75, like all of your friends pass away. And so he was relating the story of how lonely he is at his age right now. So this is not an uncommon thing, by the way. At what point in time would you start regretting being alive?
No, it's a legitimate question, but I think the point of these breakthroughs in longevity happening is that a lot of people would opt in. So it's not like
Not everyone
just
is going to
me.
do that. Like, I don't
But I think a
like,
lot of people would. I think a lot of people would, and knowing that those that don't chose not to would make me grieve them less, because it wouldn't be the tragedy of life that took them away. I'm like, oh, that's what they chose.
Well, we are all assuming the fact that the economic reality of those people is in sync with their longevity experiences. Like, I come from slums in India. Okay, I went back to the slums. I go back to that all the time whenever I visit. Just to go back and see, like, to be grateful from where I came and how long I've come. There are still many people who can't afford a proper burial, a funeral. Like the school that I went, the Montessori school I went, still exists. One without like even enclosing, like it's just
No
open to the entire environment. And so when you get to November, December, it's super cold and kids fall sick. And so we had to go build like all the enclosures there. So we are all assuming that like a small population, a small spectra of population is going to basically dictate how the world lives. But there's a large minority of people who are they can't even afford education.
No.
They can't afford like, minimum wages. They can't afford like healthcare. I'll give you another example. Like my next door neighbor, she had 2 heart attacks. She's my age, 2 years elder to me. And so they told her like, she has to take this hypertension injection which will help her like calm down her hypertension problems. I never heard of an injection in India for 1.5 lakh, which is $2,000. It seems like outrageous money, by the way. So I said, hey, like, and she was worried, like, like, why should I take it? Like, it's so expensive. Like, I don't even I don't want to live. Like, who the cares? Sort of. So I'm like standing in the queue, and I force her to take the injection. By the way, I said, like, like, you're not dying on me because everyone else is dying on me. Because we grew up, like the way we grew up. I'll tell you the way we grew up. So I used to wear black shoes, and she used to wear white shoes, and we used to flip flop the shoes because we couldn't afford the shoes. Okay, so that close we are. And I was standing in front of the queue, and there was a guy sitting in front of me, and he was asked to pay 60 lakhs, which is $100,000. And the fear they were putting in that guy is like, we can make that person live if you paid 60 lakh rupees. And I look at that person, and I know for a fact that he cannot afford 60 lakhs. And they're going to go sell a farmland, or their house, or their jewelry, or they're going to take a loan, and they're going to live in debts forever. So this notion, this fantasy, the fantasy of longevity, and we want to live long, is all predicated on the fact that we can economically survive. I know there is talk about universal blah 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 play. None of these are actually doing anything about it, to be honest. I get on the show, like I see the show. There was a beautiful show, like a podcast, televised like worldwide, by the way. Everyone watched it. 2 billionaires sitting against each other, talking to each other. One guy, an Indian billionaire, and the other guy is Elon Musk. And they're talking about humanity. One guy has $500 billion and is negotiating a $1 trillion pay package. The other guy has $1 billion. Together they have $501 billion. That multiply that by 88 rupees. That is 40 trillion Indian rupees. Put that in a bank and give it to 1 billion people.
Yeah.
Many people will survive. And they were talking about humanity. But their goal is to make money. Right? So we have created this society where we celebrate money.
Yeah.
And we haven't created the society where humanity can thrive. And longevity can have an aspiration. And we are not preparing that society in the first place. So where is the preparation in all of this? That's my question to you guys. Tell me about, like, how do we prepare the society to live longer and happier?
Tax the wealthy. By which I mean the corporations. The corporations that have stolen the data of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people's work, whether it's, I'm an author, you're an author, people who've had their, basically everyone's, the collective output of humanity that is available online, tax the corporations that have used that to train their algorithms and their AI models, and then put that wealth into the support of people so they can have access to medicine and healthcare and education and safe, clean water and pesticide-free, processed-free food that is not going to cause diabetes and the rest of it. Like, the solutions are there.
Yeah.
In historic, I'm not one for like the accumulation of vast amounts of wealth in the hands of very few and these sort of dynasties that then perpetuate these sorts of kind of inherited billionaire trust fund kids, whatever. But at the same time, if you look back historically, people who had lots of money would typically ensure their legacy by investing back in the cultures in which they were embedded. Mm-hmm. Is Musk doing that?
He's not doing it.
No, so like you've got these billionaires
he's actually negotiating $1 trillion pay package. How do you get $1 trillion pay package? By being more profitable. How do you become more profitable?
Yeah.
By becoming more efficient. What does it mean? Less humans in the job.
Yeah, but maybe he's not a great example. Because
That's the examples we all aspire to.
No, we do not all aspire to him. Let me tell you, there's a lot of people.
Social media maybe is warping his brain.
Yeah,
we think that is success, by the way.
All the gas interests.
So I'll give you a little bit alternate story, which was Bill Gates. Bill Gates was a T-Rex, just ferociously tearing through other companies, like very amoral, like like for a long time. But then he married Melinda, like a bit flipped, and
He was always married to Melinda. What do you mean? He was always married to her.
well,
But cheating on her too.
well,
Oh my God. Really?
No, but he had a change, right? He became more of service.
well, yeah. So like that aside, the richest man in the world at the time, human.
Yes.
But he actually made an incredible turn and has saved millions of lives.
Yeah.
Millions of lives.
Yeah.
Like fighting malaria, like a disease, like, hey Elon, maybe go hang out with Bill. Like there's a little bit of that of hope there, and even with someone who was a ferocious, like not really caring. He didn't even donate much early on. Just didn't care. Just money, power, like Windows, like But like something flipped for the good in him, and had a tremendous impact.
Yeah.
And in fact, the amount that there could be an idea where like if you had these like accumulations of wealth, if you had a culture and a reward system amongst all that affected it, and that people skewed more that way, maybe someone should write poetry about that.
But we're going down the opposite
Bregman
direction.
has written about this. So he's like a young 30-something-year-old Dutch historian who's written this book called Moral Ambition, where he talks about maybe 2-3 generations ago, where the emphasis was, if you ask people what does living well mean, it was a pursuit of a meaningful life. And now you ask people what does living well mean, and certainly in the West, it's having enough money to live.
Yeah.
And so it's about money, but money becomes a thing when it's when not having enough money is a barrier to living sufficiently well that you don't have to worry. So it's that scarcity thing that you're talking about. But there is a redemptive possibility. We all have the seeds of beauty and compassion within us.
For sure.
And I
The
think
answer
that's-
is consciousness.
Well, like-
it's consciousness. It's always about consciousness, compassion, kindness, the better angels of our nature, the good, the true, and the beautiful. And
But are we
how
not
to
going
awaken that?
as a society? Are we not going back in the opposite direction? Like we want like fewer taxes from the corporates. They're all celebrating it. Are we not?
I mean, who wants fewer tax? I want.
Well, like all the corporations today, like they're all
Yeah.
celebrating like taxes being less today.
Well, and so there's always a back and forth, and the answer isn't 0 and it isn't 100. What's the right rate? And then there's a lot of embedded assumptions and winners and losers and democracies and
So
underhanded.
it's such a complicated problem.
It's a complicated problem, but it gets less complicated if they accumulate those billions and then pull the Bill Gates maneuver.
Yeah.
That helps. But there's definitely the society is going to create the wealth, and it's going to have to find a balance between not letting people starve to death in the slums. And in fact, there could be enough of a productivity gain that you can still have really rich people, but everyone, the rising tide, it's not trickle down.
Yeah.
It's rising tide.
Well, this is Steven Pinker's idea, right? I mean, that website, Human Progress, that talks about all the ways in which the world has improved across the board for even the people supposedly on the bottom. Is there truth to that data? So hasn't that played out? Things aren't far from perfect, but you can track the ways things are better now than they used to be.
There are things that are better, and even things that every poor person has access to. The richest person in the world couldn't have had in 1950.
That's right.
Think of your iPhone or like
That's
whatever.
right. That's right.
And so like there are examples of where there is demonetization of these aspects. And
Correct.
so back to the live forever pill.
Yeah.
There's probably a very high fixed cost to develop it, but it's probably a pretty low cost to manufacture it.
Yeah.
And so could you crank out 10 billion pills? With all the you probably could.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not necessarily when you're in the first starts of a technology, it's very expensive, right? It's mainframe.
Yeah.
But then it gets down to iPod, and so like that to me is like that's the hopeful part of like some of these breakthroughs. They might start being very sort of exquisite, but I would hope that the effort goes in to make them available. Let's cure cancer for everyone.
For sure.
In the slums too, everywhere. Like that, and look, if any of us are lucky enough to be that next billionaire, like maybe take half. Like there's a decreasing marginal utility to dollars.
Who dictates all of that? Who's going to dictate all of that?
government dictates some of it. Society, can create an environment.
But when there's regulatory capture by corporates, then it's government doesn't have
How do you do that?
the power to be able to.
We've seen a lot of examples of that.
We as a society we haven't done that in the last, I don't know, like I've been on this earth for the last 45 years, I've not seen this happen.
So when you end up with monopolies and regulatory capture, and then essentially you're talking about a system which is so enclosed that you don't have checks and balances, and then can you change the system from within, or do alternatives need to be generated in order to provide alternatives so that when the system comes to a grinding halt, there's something else or other things that can then support? I mean, I'm not a historian, but like.
So longevity is a phenomenal topic, but like the societal impact and like all the things that need to be done is super important. I'll give you a cow story.
A cow story?
A cow story.
Oh.
So I was one of those morons who used to think that like drone delivery is going to happen tomorrow. I was so convinced in 2015. Okay, and then like I started thinking about autonomous cars and all kinds of stuff, and like I have like tons of patents on this, like drones flying out of like a truck and then coming back to the truck and sitting on the truck and taking the packages and all kinds of shit like that. Okay, so and then I was like super fascinated about all of this, and then I go to India, obviously, right? And like I see the way people drive. Okay, in India, in order that you drive, you have to be a 360 person.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's like the guy will put like the left hand sign, but he will go on the right hand. He will put the right hand sign and he will go on the left hand. Like just like the Indian guys nod their heads. Yes and no, by the way. Right? And they may put both the hands and then they may be they may be driving straight. And so my driver, I can't drive in India, by the way. I always need a driver. Okay? So my driver knows how to navigate the roads. And then he encounters a cow sitting in the center of the road. And everyone is like trying to honk.
She's just sitting there.
She's just sitting there. Okay? So the cow could not understand the intent of the driver. Neither the driver could understand the intent of the cow.
Oh.
And technology, the way we think about technology and pushing the technology into the society is this problem.
In what sense?
That we are not completely, there are a lot of people who don't even understand how to use it, how to consume it. They're like cows.
So you're saying we need like a literacy that accompanies
Absolutely.
technology so that people know how to use the tools in the
They need
right
to know
way
how
and
we need to
acquire
create the
skills
conditions.
and
We
whatnot.
cannot have
Yeah.
the cows on the road when you're trying to like develop autonomous cars. Can we?
Fair enough. Education, literacy, I mean, these are things that need to scale alongside
Regulation,
exponential tech.
policies, all
Yeah.
these things are super critical.
Yeah, for sure.
And we are like at an inflection point in the technology. We are running so fast with technology. We are so fascinated by technology and what it can do. We are not asking the question, are we really preparing the society for the incoming change?
I think we know the answer.
What is the answer?
No, we're not.
And so how do we?
It's a new experiment, and we're going to screw it up.
And what is the cost of the screw up?
Variable.
Stratospheric.
Yeah.
Or humanity adapts somehow. and we see the market to create adaptation and new kinds
I mean,
of
there'll have to be
economy.
some adaptation.
Yeah,
but again, it's
but
about
like-
the range of suffering. How much do you
That-
want to...
yeah, for sure.
And how much... I think the thing that really strikes me is that we have such extraordinary potential for imagination, for strategy, for looking back through history, spotting patterns. If we have the skills, you mentioned about the idea of, the potential to become gods. If we have the tools, certainly not with the LLMs, but with other like neurosymbolic AI or world models or whatever it might be, to be able to create tools that extend our capacity to understand and engage with the external world and to adapt it to our needs while hopefully supporting its life. If we have all of that capacity, I refuse to believe that the best we can come up with is these Gen AI models that are sloppy, extracting all these resources while people are getting access to dwindling water supply. Like, just, we have so much more potential than this. And I think it's such a lie, this kind of, this sense that this is the best we can do. It's not. We are capable of so much beauty.
Absolutely.
And so many people, every person I speak to when I give keynotes, at all of these sorts of events, whether it's an open business event or for an insurance company, the people that come up after are like, yes, there is potential, because if you're buying into this idea that this is the best we can do, really, in these beautiful brief lives that we have.
And we are so reckless about all this technology and with the way we are developing it.
But not all people are reckless. There's the Distributed AR Research Institute, there's the Mozilla Foundation, there's Tristan Harris's Centre for Humane Technology, the work of Timnit Gebru, the work of Karen Howe, the work of people like Tom Chatfield, Gary Marcus. Like, there are Cory Doctorow. There are so many people doing extraordinary work who have been basically saying, let's be an analytical, discerning, and sober in our conversation about the risks, how to mitigate them, what societies we want to build into, and how we can draw upon a pluralism of voices and histories and cultures and philosophies and cosmologies to create alternative futures that actually support the kinds of visions that we would want to inhabit or live into if we're going to live for 250 years or have offspring. Like, so this all exists. The voices are there. It's just not evenly distributed, and they're not getting as much media attention as others.
Well, there's
But
a
they
strong
don't have
force.
the power.
They do have. They increasingly are having the power. Like,
Well,
these-
let's take an example. Like, I want to contradict that point.
okay.
Okay? So, there was an extraordinary race to actually push out like nano banana.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay? And people said, oh great, let's push the software out. You know what happened? I was in India at that time when it happened. Okay? I was there. So, people actually took the picture of one broken egg, and basically they said, 10 of my eggs are broken. And there was so much fraud in the delivery system because people were not responsible pushing the technology out. The technology is so beautiful. I'm not disputing whether it's beautiful or not. I'm not disputing that. The reckless nature of how it was done created so much fraud. People were writing medical transcriptions saying I'm so sorry, I'm sick, I cannot come to the office today.
You wonder
They
why.
were filing all this
because people
insurance
hate their jobs. They've got jobs. They can't afford to eat. You're going to get that kind of behavior when society doesn't support you.
So now, what is the role of this big tech company, the Karen House and others? They are all what I would call basically influencers or opinion leaders, so to say, right? But
Or whistleblowers.
Or the whistleblowers. But the power lies with the companies which are actually pushing this technology. And they're being reckless more and more. There feels like a race. I'm Gemini 3, ChatGPT 5, maybe 6, and then that fellow is going to say 4, and this fellow is going to say 7.
Well,
they're
this
going to keep perpetuating this donkey work and creating a very dysfunctional dystopian society.
Corporate adoption of AI technologies this year in the Financial Times, it has shown to have dropped. And I think the reason for that is all this overblown hype about what these technologies can do, and they can do a lot, let's not mistake that, are not meeting the bloated or hyperbolic expectations that were set a year, 2 years ago. So you're going to see market kind of response to the results that are being found or not in the case, as the case may be, and also things like the use of these technologies in schools, in education. We've already touched on this conversation, but you're going to get some kind of kickback based on the actual value or lack thereof of these tools, the actual ROI or whatever. So it's
self-correcting.
It's self-correcting.
The system ends up being self-correcting.
This is the classic in tech. It's the hype cycle, trough
Yeah.
of disillusionment,
Yeah.
plateau
And then
of
the classic,
productivity.
exactly.
It always happens that way.
And then a new literacy is born, a
And-
set of practices, and so on and so forth.
And so there's
Isn't that-
disruptions,
Yeah.
right? And this has happened with the internet, happened with the printing press, whatever. They happen over different periods of time. These are so they feel
But
sharp.
in all of that, you had the agency, not with AI.
Why not with AI?
We don't, we are giving up the control.
But so
yeah.
there's a whole class of people who are choosing not to use AI, just like Steve Jobs' kids didn't have screens, where people are retreating to philosophy, to the humanities, to books, to slow reading, to somatic learning, and having the capacity. You mentioned Montessori schools. Why is it that some of the wealthiest, technologically patented people in their families are sending their kids to lo-fi Montessori schools? Why?
I went to Montessori school also.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's why.
that's right. But like, so we are seeing counter trends already. There was a study that was done by the BSI in the UK earlier this year. 16 to 21-year-olds, 47% of them, when polled, said they wish they'd been raised in an era without the internet. Think of that. No Deliveroo, no Spotify, no porn, no YouTube, no Netflix.
Yeah.
They would forego all of that at age 16 to 21 to be able to live more fully at that young age. So like, clearly something is not quite addressing our needs, even at a young age, before we develop the wisdom to be able to understand some of the benefits of not being online the whole time.
You ever heard that line that says, it is the best of times, it is the worst of times?
Yeah.
Different levels of analysis and different perspectives. Like there's this like simultaneity
Yeah.
where it's like, yeah, I mean, it is.
It's intense.
Yeah.
It is
the best of
intense.
times, it is the worst of times. But having said everything, and not looking away from the pain of the world, I still find a lot to marvel over and think that there's great potential, and like the eloquence and spirit of people like you, and there's lots of people like you, lots of people like us, just as many as potentially those that we find disempowering or uninspired. Never doubt that a small, passionate, committed group of people can change the world, and it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead, like, be the change you want to be in the world. We have to come back to that. Otherwise, like, we shoot ourselves. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I,
Like the notion of this discussion was not to be anti-technology or any of that.
Yeah.
It is to be like more responsible with it.
Oh,
Totally.
And like, how do we prepare the society for it, right?
Yes.
Like, here's another thought experiment we did. Okay, so we just like India, random, like we went and talked to 5,000 people. We asked them, what do you know? Like, what is artificial intelligence? They didn't know. They didn't know. They did not know.
Unevenly distributed.
So it's a country with 1.4 billion people, and it's like technologically very savvy. So there's a lot of like coaching and teaching and educating and rebalancing the society, thinking about let's take another example. Larry Nassar, the guy who was like caught like raping kids, the gymnastic kids, like, he was sentenced to like 1,000 years in prison. He was only going to live another 20 years. Now, let's say like he lives for another 250 years.
Castration is always an option. Just saying.
So we have to think about criminal justice. We have to think about like what does it mean from financial perspective, the psychology of things. How do we think about relationships? Everything needs to be rethought.
But how exciting!
How exciting is the time? But like, who's thinking all of that?
Well, us, clearly.
But we need more of this. We need more of these discussions. We need more of this education. We need more of this, like, we need to become the voices that we want the society to look like.
Well, and come join us.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're doing this. That's why we're bringing this conversation out in the world.
But I think these are very limited these days, right? Like, they're not as much.
I don't agree. I see this in so many different places. I think that there's another question that's one step beyond that, which is when we have access to, for instance, these long-form podcasts where people are coming together, there's always different sorts of small groups where people are having these sorts of conversations. What's the next step? You can't just be locked in talk. There are a lot of these ideas floating around. They're not necessarily new. What I think needs to happen next is then some form of citizen assembly or some form of ways of bringing people together so their voices can be heard, so we can have these discussions in greater depth, and then that can inform regulation. It can inform the way that we structure our educational systems and change our political systems. That's the next step. Conversation there is in abundance. I find it everywhere. Every single place I talk or place that I'm invited to go listen to someone else talk, like, it's there, it's right under the surface. I agree with this. So many people talking about it. The question is, what next? What do we do? How do we take thoughtful, considered action? And
So
what
do
kind
you
of
think?
vision do we
What
want
do
to
you think is the next step? Like, what should happen?
Citizens' assemblies, get people together and start to think about what these sorts of solutions might look like in practice. Lobby your parliament. In the UK, there was this ridiculous idea about digital IDs, which would have caused all sorts of problems around surveillance technologies, which were already massively skyrocketing in the UK. Millions of people took part in getting active against it, and they had to discuss it in Parliament. And the only person who was in favour was the Prime Minister. Almost every other MP that stood up, representing their constituents, said, this is an insane idea. What about when the hack happens? Which they always do when there's a concentrated centre of data. And so like that, there are ways in which you can go against it. So
Well said.
get political. Identify the problems, come together, discuss it, find points of convergence, and get political and act. Because nothing else will really move the needle in the way that we need it to quickly enough.
So you're offered longevity for 300 years. Would you take it? Yes or no?
Yes.
No.
Yes. Join.
Depends on if my loved ones are there with me.
Okay. There you are.
Well, then maybe
So
yes.
your spouse chooses not to take it. Okay? You choose to take it. You still married. You do still stay married
Absolutely.
to another person?
Oh, well, you stay married and live.
No, your spouse decided not to take the pill. You decided to take the pill. So you're alive, she's dead.
Oh my God.
Did you remarry?
Yeah. Would you
I
be
think so.
You would marry someone else.
Yeah, it's the same discussion if a spouse dies today, I think.
Okay.
Don't want to get married, full stop.
Yeah. Stay open. Yeah.
Got it. Interesting. So AI says you're 65% compatible with your spouse, and someone offers a 95% compatible solution. Would you take the compatible solution, or would you keep your wife?
Keep.
Yeah, same. But they wouldn't be my wife, it's my partner. Well, I mean, it might be a wife. Who knows?
Well, it depends on how my marriage is feeling. If it's feeling wonderful and with all the non-rational elements as well, then I would stay. If it's feeling like, you know what, we're growing apart, I'm going to try this new thing, and you should try a new thing too.
I'll revise my opinion. I agree with him. That sounds way better.
Okay. So you have 2 kids, and you have 1 pill to give, the longevity pill. Who would you give it to?
I give it to the both of them and let them decide. It's agency.
I'd give it to the dog.
How about you?
I have
Too
one
exciting.
pill is the question?
You have 1 pill, and you have 2 kids.
Oh, wow. Impossible question.
You gotta decide.
Choose the dog. Damn, I mean,
Yeah, give it to the dog, I guess. Yeah.
You're gonna give it to the dog too?
You asked me to pick between my 2 kids. I don't know if I can do that. Yeah.
Okay, these are probably something we'll run into. I'm sure someone is going to run into this dilemma. Okay, you're 200 years old, and you can erase 100 years of your memory, including your trauma and pain. But you can retain joy and love. Would you keep it? You can erase trauma and pain, but you can keep love and joy.
The question is, can I keep wisdom? So if yes,
No,
yes.
love and joy versus trauma and pain.
But
As simple as that.
wisdom.
So you forget all the bad and you can only keep the good. Would you take that?
Not if I lose the wisdom that makes me who I am, me.
So you would not take it.
No.
me neither.
I would. There's a couple things.
Psychedelic guy.
Fair.
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 That makes us human, by the way. So you can upload your consciousness to a computer and you can live forever. Forever. So you're no longer biological. Would you do it?
Only if I have a 100% reliable kill switch.
No.
If I could simulate embodiment
How
that's
am I getting ifs?
indistinguishable from
This guy's a consultant.
indistinguishable from this, full authorial control, but not constrained by entropy. Yeah, full on. Like, yes.
Okay.
It's feeling quite lonely here in the middle of the bench. I get it.
Very efficient, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the next one, your most unfavorite politician gets longevity, and you have the power to revoke it. Would you do it? The most hated politician. I don't want to name names, like, because we all have different opinions.
Yeah, strongly consider.
So you would revoke it on their behalf.
I'd strongly consider. Well, and it's a humanity thing, right? Think of Hitler, or like think of an example like like at the full end of the spectrum, and you're going to save millions of other lives. Like I think those are, if that decision was in your lap, you'd have to weigh it.
Okay. How about you?
Yeah, with all the context and the age, because you're not condemning them beyond their natural lifespan. So I would also consider the harm caused by keeping them alive longer than they might otherwise actually live.
Maybe we
That's
could
tough,
have.
though.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go on.
Maybe we could have legislation that says that you can only govern within original biological lifespans.
That I like the sound
and
of.
the radical life extension stuff makes it so that you're not eligible to have control over large numbers of people.
Term
That's a
limit.
great idea. Yeah.
Term limit. Okay, so you're the scientist who discovered longevity. You can release it. Everyone gets it. All the consequences are discussed. Or you destroy it and let the humanity stay at 80%, like 80 years forever. What is your choice? Whether are you going to give it to everyone and let them all live, or are you going to say, like, screw it, let everyone live up to 80, but like live a full life?
I share it.
Hmm?
I share it.
You share it. Give a longer life.
Can I ask a question? Like, thinking about all the people who are living in servitude, does that mean extended servitude for them?
I hope not.
Yes.
The proportion of
obviously.
people living in servitude outweigh the number of people who have privilege in not having to live in servitude. So until that was addressed, I would say no. I would withhold. I wouldn't destroy.
What do you think they would want?
Well, if I was 6 years old and struggling down a cobalt mine and my brother was dying because of poison, and they could keep me on meds to keep me living for another 50, 60 years down those mines, I'd want to get out. If I was a woman in sex slavery, I'd want to get out. Like, fuck no, I don't want to go to any point in history where I was either darker skinned or female or a child, where my rights were stripped. And there are so many people living in exactly those conditions today. Some in my ancestral country, and I would not choose that for anyone else. These are sufferings which you need not to have in the world. So until that was resolved, I would withhold it.
Does it not apply to even like poor people?
But poor doesn't necessarily mean suffering.
Oh, like they are suffering for sure. They don't have food to eat.
If you're talking about poor as in, if you're, I think any system which has baked in inequality where you're keeping people, you're withholding a dignified life from people.
But the question is, can they choose to take it or not?
Can they choose to take it or not? Yeah, but they don't have a choice.
No, you can give it to all, or even you don't.
Yeah.
Like you're the scientist, you can just give it to
Yeah,
all. or you don't.
I think for me, I give it to everyone, and they can put it in their drawer and decide.
Yeah, but if you're taking people's passports from them, making them work long hours, and they're essentially in servitude, you're not going to give them access to the pill.
Well, so that's a different question.
But this is all implied by that question.
Well,
So I would withhold until those are addressed.
I think your counterexamples are powerful.
Yeah.
How about you, my friend? You would give it to everyone.
Let's drop it into the bucket. Let's unleash it and see what happens.
It sounds like a Google guy. Sorry.
Well, you wanted a plurality of opinion.
I know, I love it.
Not say we
Actually. I
haven't
love
got
that. I love this, by the way. So the final question. Now, I want you all to be honest. We've discussed a lot, whether it's like what happens to relation, financial, like all of this relation, like poverty, this and that, responsible use of technology. Would you still want to live longer? The 300 years. The answer, the final answer.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Oh, come on.
She's
Join
not
us.
sure. You don't inspire her.
I'm scared for the future.
I'm scared.
Yes, 100% yes.
You would be 100% yes. Okay. And I'm a no.
Why are you a no?
I don't know. I don't know
That's
if it's
the-
worth it, because I believe living in the moment is more important than living 300 years.
But
They
there's
don't
300
have to- they
years
don't
of
have to-
moments.
those are not mutually exclusive, I don't think.
What's
for
that
me.
true?
They are. Like for me, like, if I lived a beautiful life, my mom lived a full life. And some people, even if I gave them like 700 years, they wouldn't have lived what my mom lived. So for me, that is living the life, not living 350 years or 250 years. So I wouldn't do it. That's just me. Okay, final reflections. Jason, you go first.
Yes. Well, final reflections is gratitude for a stimulating, mind-expanding conversation. It's always nice to go deeply into this subject matter, which is exhilarating and existential and challenging and beautiful. And yeah, just really grateful for you guys.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have spaces in which you can unpack some of these more poignant, challenging, hopefully life-affirming questions. And my hope is that more of these conversations will make their way into more spaces. So thank you for making that possible.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you to you all. This was one of those where, what's the point of life is make new friends, learn new things. I felt this was really amazing time spent.
Yeah, so
I'm incredibly thankful to the three of you. I know that like you came all the way from different parts of the country. Like you're here local, and I'm gonna come to your house so that you could cook me food.
such a hard life.
But I'm super inspired by the conversation and the wisdom that we had. And thanks for all the vulnerabilities, because we went like into topics that were very uncomfortable, somewhat provocative at times. And I sincerely thank you for the time that you guys spent. I know you could have spent it anywhere else, but thanks for making it my time and the viewers' time. We are grateful for that. And we're going to have a lot more of these interesting conversations about how society needs to evolve as technology evolves around us. Thank you so much.
And thanks to the Four Seasons Hotel.
And I will do the other one.
Thank you.
To the post.
Yeah, and we are sincerely thankful to the Four Seasons Hotel for letting us host this show here in San Francisco. It's an amazing hotel, as you all could see, and we are deeply appreciative of their time and space. And thank you so much.
If AI were to develop a pill that could increase your lifespan, I think it would be so expensive that it would further stratify the haves and the have-nots.
It's a scary thought.
That'd be sick. I'd do it in a heartbeat.
I think generally being alive is preferable to being dead, and so if you get to extend that, why not?
No. Oh wow, it's amazing. I don't think about it, but wow.
Do it naturally.
I think I would. Yeah, you would. I think I would, just for the possibilities that could open.
No, I'm not experiment object,
Yeah.
I'm human, religiously, God gave me certain years to live.
People should live whatever God decided to live, not by the medicine or not by something else.
I believe in God, so I believe that He created us and all things, and so He created science, and if science makes it so you can live longer, then I don't know, maybe.
No, I would be happy just living my life and let the next generation take over.
Personally, I could see myself doing that. I don't think everyone should do that, because unless everybody you know and love around you is going to take the pill, because you could be very lonely for 200 years. If everybody you knew and loved withered and died.
If you say, I have a young wife, well, of course I would like to live 300 more years, right? A good companion. So the main thing for me, my needs is really companion. Not money, but companion.
Sharing it with people that you really care about, I think, would make it more worthwhile.
I would like to know if my family will be here as well with a pill. What kind of planning for my 300 years about it. in which condition will I will live in 300, because if I will be poor or without good health or without good environment, I'm not sure if I could good news if we live 300.
And I've seen people die with dementia. I've seen people younger than me. My brother died at 44 of cancer. No, to live longer but not live well, not interested.
Personally, me, I could handle that kind of stress, but probably not everybody.
I just don't know if 300 is, at least in my mind, I'm just not ready for that yet.
You live for 300 years.
Okay.
Living, that's more life to live. Like, hey, maybe I change my mind down the line, but I can always choose that later as well.
I'm worried that it's going to get really old after 250 years, but I think, yeah, if that exists, then I would probably take the pill.
I wouldn't take it for just the sake of it. If the quality of life improves, definitely I'll take it.
I'm happy with my life currently. I'm living my life to the fullest with the person I love the most. So I'm happy just being who I am. I don't want to extend it.
Yes, I would take the pill. It's 300 extra years plus the years I'm already alive right now. So it's like, it's close to eternity. Humanity is short, I think. It's like we kind of go off the map very quick.
I'm happy living a good 70-80 years and probably moving on.
No. I don't want to take it. I just want to enjoy life right now.
Because the quality of life is important than the quantity of life, correct? How you age, that is very important.
We all have a finite amount of time. The experience should be here. We should contribute and enjoy and try and make a positive impact as much as we can. But when the time is up, the time is up.
I think we should be focused on improving the quality of life, and maybe. But I think if you improve the quality of life, then lifespans will naturally, extend. I'm just concerned about how that new ability would be manipulated in our society. So, yeah.
I'm 45. If someone handed me a pill tomorrow that guaranteed me that I would live to 300, would I take it? Honestly, I don't know. Part of me is electrified, endless learning, watching humanity reach for the stars. But then I thought about it, and I realized something very profound. The question was never, would I live 300 years? The question is, am I living this life right now in a way that's worth extending? That's the most important question. Because if I'm going to be going through the motions, putting things off for someday, half present today, what's the point of living up to 250 years more than what I'm going to live today? My mother lived 70 years. She came from a single room in South India, pawned her wedding ring, so I could get an education. She lived 70 years, and she lived more fully than most people would live in 700 years. So here's what I'm taking from this. We don't need to live 300 years to live differently. We don't need a pill. We just need to ask, if you had 250 extra years, what would you do differently this afternoon? What conversation would you stop avoiding? What dreams would you stop postponing? What person would you finally forgive? Because whether you get to live 80 years or 800 years, the only moment you'll ever actually have is the one that you're living in right now. So what are you doing with all of the time that you have? Live the life to the fullest, because you don't need to live up to 250 years.